Hey guys, join me as we dive into My Younger Brother Forces My Flower Path. Make sure to subscribe, and let's dive in. The story begins in Suiton County. A girl asks the butler if there's any news from Eddie. He replies that, unfortunately, there is still no news from Mr. Eddie. The girl wonders where he could have ended up in such a difficult time. The Seventh Empire was on the brink of collapse, and last night, unknown assailants attacked the imperial palace. The last emperor of the Seven Hills, Hildar, was a cruel tyrant, for which he was put into eternal sleep. The nobles were forced to lock themselves in their homes to await punishment, and the Satin family was among them. The head of the clan was named Roviel Satin. She was still thinking about Eddie's disappearance when she suddenly heard a scream directed at her. Someone bursts into the room and announces that the soldiers who attacked the palace are already here and have set up an ambush. The butler turns anxiously to the countess, and she understands that after the death of the emperor, the soldiers moved on towards them. But as the mayor of the city, she is obliged to protect her family at any cost. The butler asks where she is going. In response, the girl simply goes outside, and the bright sunlight hits her right in the eyes. Her brother appears in front of her, greets her joyfully, and immediately asks if he is late. Roviel asks in surprise what he is doing here, and Eddie replies that he has prepared a gift for her. He hands over the tiara, and the girl, in shock, realizes that it was he who started the rebellion. After some time, she is already in the theater, where her brother says that the coronation ceremony is over. Now his sister is the true Empress. Roviel turns to Eddie. She asks him to listen, and he calmly asks what's the matter, and the girl asks the main question. Why did he even do all this? The young man replies that 2 years ago, last winter, his sister herself said those words. She said that if she were Empress, she would do everything much better. The girl realizes with horror that he has decided to carry this out literally. She understands that the blood has already been shed, and she will have to deal with the consequences, because the past cannot be brought back. After this, Roviel orders Eddie to call the scribes, and he asks in surprise what she is going to do. She replies that the Empress is obliged to work properly, and asks if he wants her to become like the previous ruler. The young man says that she is his dear sister, and he worries about her, but admits that this role suits her much better. Roviel falls silent for a moment, then orders the butler to tie the idiot to a chair, and he agrees without objection. Thus, the Empire of the Seven Hills acquired a new ruler, the first empress named Roviel Satin, and this became a step towards a bright future. However, soon the girl is already sitting over papers with dark circles under her eyes. Meanwhile, her brother lies quietly on the couch while she gets up and declares that she has had enough. She spent 3 whole months clearing away the rubble left by the previous ruler, and the work did not diminish. Eddie wonders if they haven't gotten rid of the extra people, and why she should worry so much. But Roviel reminds that there are 4 dukes in the empire, located in all directions of the world, and she does not favor any of them. Besides, there are almost no people she can completely trust. Eddie recalls 3 families. They left the country because of the struggle for the throne, and he himself is always on guard and will not allow anyone to encroach on his sister's place. Roviel says there are strict rules between them, and reminds them that his antics only make the work harder. The young man agrees, and, as if nothing had happened, hands his sister a grape. He says that she is incredibly talented, since even the head of the inspection team changed his mind, and she will definitely cope. Roviel asks ironically about talent and says that if she had it, she would have gotten married long ago. She also complains that people are running away from such a workload and where to find a smart, reliable, and resilient assistant. Suddenly, the thought of resignation comes to her, and then the idea of finding someone who really understands business. She slams her hand down on the table, and her brother asks worriedly what happened. The girl declares she needs to get married. Eddie is surprised, but notes that she's old enough. All she needs to do is find the right man, and necessarily the strongest on the continent, to which Roviel immediately and sharply objects. She asks Eddie to listen carefully and explains that she needs someone who can hear, reliable and helpful, almost like a butler, and the young man says he understands. He promises to find someone who will suit his busy sister, and the girl asks in surprise who exactly. She feels uneasy. Eddie Sutton is her brother. Their father fell into eternal sleep when the boy was very young, and then, when Roviel was 14, their mother left too. The children had to focus on preserving the Satin lineage, while Eddie was still a baby. Roviel had no time for him, which is why he left home for 6 long years. In her past life, Rovielle fell into eternal sleep at the age of 27, and Eddie's departure became her greatest regret. After that, she got a chance to fix everything by going back to the time when she was 14, and the first thing she did was run to Edwin. She hugged him tightly, and thanks to this sincerity, he grew up smart. He became a strong and powerful young man, who was later called a fencing genius. But soon rumors began to circulate about him as a madman from Finland. Rovielle understands that she raised him this way, allowing everything when people turn to her, and she answers that everything is fine. She asks if this is the complete list of participants, and Kyle confirms that there are 178 in total. The name of Dalton Pagos catches her attention, and she is surprised by the involvement of the Eastern Duchy, suspecting ill intentions. Rovielle realizes that all 4 duchies have taken part in the tournament. She is uncomfortable admitting that she is Empress, because the unification of the dukes would become a serious threat to her. She asks Kyle to tell her more about the participants from the duchies. He describes the first as the strongest knight of the East, a 23-year-old leader with a great future, but hot-tempered. Rovielle asks for the next one, but quickly rejects a candidate known only for his athletic achievements. She is looking for someone who knows how to manage lands, understands economics and politics, and is able to resolve conflicts. Kyle replies that almost all of the candidates are skilled swordsmen, and the girl does not understand why they are here. He explains that they have to deal with Sir Edwin. That's why those who are excellent with a sword are selected, which greatly surprises Rovielle. She understands that her brother has ruined her plans, because she needs a manager, not a fighter. Kyle adds that there is still the Duke of the North, who is considered Eddie's favorite and future rival. This is Duke de Hard of the Northern Duchy, who is feared and called a monster. But Rovielle knows him from his past life and understands that he is not dangerous at all. Moreover, marriage to one of the dukes will delay the pressure from the others and give her time to strengthen her position. She is determined not to let Eddie ruin such a valuable candidate and says with a smile that she is going to tear off someone's legs. Soon she demands that the young man raise his hands higher, and he asks how he is worse than the other applicants. He doesn't understand whether she really needs someone weaker by her side, and this makes the girl angry. She finally pulls herself together and says that the decision has already been made, and the choice is hers. She will decide for a year whether the candidate is suitable and forbids Eddie from interfering. The brother states that there should be no weaklings around her, but promises to protect his sister if necessary. Rovielle knows she must be on guard, and soon a man enters the room, asking if she called. This is Cecil Bright, commander of the Internal Affairs Inspection Team. The Empress greets her warmly and asks how things are going. Cecile is surprised, not understanding the reason for the meeting, and admits that she hasn't been home for a long time. She asks if there are orders, and Rovielle apologizes for disturbing her. The Empress asks to look after Eddie, fearing to let things slide. Cecile agrees, but carefully asks if she is sure about her previous relationship with Edwin. Rovielle doesn't understand the hint and says that such close brother and sister are hard to find in the Empire. However, Cecile reports that Edwin secretly crossed the border last month with Menglada's elixir. It's a rare medicine from the Kingdom of Grain, and there's a risk that he mixed it into the Empress's food. Even a small dose could have been dangerous, and it is unknown for what purpose he did it secretly. Rovielle just smiles and says that Cecile has nothing to worry about, since it's an old hobby of Edwin's. After the death of his parents, he became obsessed with her health. At 16, he was already running for medicine, and after the ban, he simply changed his method. She says that her brother is exactly that kind of person, and thanks to him, she is healthy, and Cecile accepts this. The commander promises to do his best and send a report on the dukes, and Rovielle agrees. When the door closes, the girl falls onto the sofa and realizes that she urgently needs a husband helper. Otherwise, she risks falling into eternal sleep from overwork already in this life. After a while, she comes out to the candidates, sits on the throne, and orders them to rise. Rovielle notices the heirs of the houses of Pagos and Delma, as well as one more. The one called the Monster of the North, Haven de Hard, declares the tournament open. She remembers her first encounter with the Monster of the North during the harshest winter. 14 years ago, she was a girl who bore the burden of running the family. She was deceived, betrayed, had to sell things, and her last hope was the journey north. Now she sees in this young man the same rough features as she did then. Moreover, this young man was her age and came from the far north, Haven de Hard. Now looking back, Rovielle realizes that her decision to go north was the right one. Then he took pity on her, seeing her shivering from cold and fear. and now she finds it strange to hear him called the monster of the north. After all, it was he who became the benefactor of the Satin family. At this point, Eddie turns to his sister and announces that the performance is about to begin. It's the turn of the southern gentleman, Sir Japhet Delmoy, to duel. Roviel addresses his brother. She asks if he thinks Delmoy will win, to which Eddie just smirks and replies that she should watch more closely. The girl remarks that it has been too long since she cooked his lunches and watched him train. Moments later, a cry of victory rings out from Duke Delmoy. Roviel declares she was right, and Eddie adds that Sir Pagos will be next. She asks if this is true and when the finale will be. Her brother replies in a week, and Roviel realizes the wait will be long. She no longer cares who wins, as long as someone capable of taking on the job appears as soon as possible. Suddenly, a noise comes from the arena, and the girl sees the Duke pointing his sword at his opponent. He raises his weapon and demands that his enemy fall into eternal sleep. Roviel immediately gets up from his seat and addresses Eddie. The young man jumps into the arena, showing that he understands her, and easily repels the Duke's attack. The enemy's sword flies out of his hands, and he indignantly shouts about the violation of traditions. He states that Satin has no right to interfere, to which Roviel calmly asks if he considers this sacred. She says that anyone who tries to put an opponent into eternal sleep will incur wrath and be considered a criminal. The Duke is angry and accuses the Empress of changing the rules on the fly. Roviel replies that the purpose of the tournament is to choose her future husband. This means that she has the right to set the rules and sees no point in paying attention to such a duel. After this, she instructs Eddie to monitor the tournament, and he agrees. The blonde remains furious, and Roviel realizes that she thought she had gotten rid of the trash, but it was just the beginning. She had no idea what chaos she would face after ascending to the throne. To the north, the empire is held back by Gripton, and next to them is the friendly country of Zilton. However, trade disputes broke out between Zilton and the Seven Hills. The reason was the difference in gold coins, 12 grams versus 14. The emperor's aunt appropriated 320,000 gold coins. Zilton officially protested, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, almost bankrupt, declared that it was impossible to make payments. At this point, Roviel abruptly orders the man to shut up, and he asks again, confused. She tells him not to worry and to just follow the soldiers, as nothing else is required of him. The man recalls her threat, but the girl coldly replies that he has poor hearing and is already being taken away. He begs for mercy, while other aristocrats call the punishment too harsh. Roviel replies that she is ashamed to see the result of 12 years of his incompetence. She asks why they can't find solutions to problems, and whether they are ready to take responsibility. The Empress asks why taxes should cover their mistakes, promising not to harm them if she hears the truth. She asks him directly if he knew about Marcos and his aunt's embezzlement. Days later, the former minister was put into eternal sleep for bribery, and Zilton was compensated for the damage. Meanwhile, the tournament continued, and Roviel sighed tiredly. Eddie runs up to her and says that she looks exhausted and has hardly eaten. Roviel replies that she is just tired and asks suspiciously if he added something to the soup again. Eddie evades the answer, and the girl repeats that she does not need the elixir. And a smart husband. My brother assures me there's nothing to worry about. He says that Duke Dehard will win, and Roviel is surprised, because the tournament is not over yet. Eddie replies that he is the strongest in the north, and it is obvious. They enter the arena, and Roviel sits on the throne. She sees Haven Dehard fighting with the very same Duke who was outraged earlier. Their swords meet, but the enemy's weapon cracks. The blonde looks at the fragment in shock, and Haven is declared the winner. Roviel smiles as Haven approaches and dedicates the victory to Her Majesty. She extends her hand to him and accepts the gesture. Haven kisses her hand, and Roviel realizes she has found a permanent employee, the one who will stay with her until the very end. The young man turns to her again. She congratulates him on his victory and asks what he wanted to say. Haven apologizes and admits he has one question to ask. He asks if her younger brother is mad, and Roviel becomes wary. Haven explains that without participating in the tournament, he would have headed to Gripton, and if someone there had fallen into eternal sleep, a war would have begun. Roviel understands that in the event of an invasion, the north of Dehard will be the first to suffer. She realizes that Eddie threatened the Duke into participating. Realizing that Dehard is a worthy man, she tells him so. and he states that he has the right to refuse and return if he does not wish to continue. But Haven replies that the idea of a strike now seems tempting to him. He says it will be a war with Krypton, and asks if she is against it. He adds that as the winner of the tournament, she will not be able to remain idle. Roviel feels that Eddie's crazy plan is behind this. She says they should look at the bigger picture, but Haven takes her hand. He whispers that he already belongs to her. Roviel is surprised and replies that only she will make the decision. He's not the only contender, and Haven clarifies whether this is true. She confirms and says that she will review everyone within a year. Haven asks if she doesn't like him. Roviel replies that it is not a matter of sympathy, but of choice. Haven admits that he likes her. Roviel thinks that if he proves himself, he will be included as a candidate, but he remains silent about it. She takes him by the chin and says that they understand each other. Haven presses her hand to her cheek and promises not to let her down. Later, the Empress returns to business, deciding to load the victors with new work. At that moment, there is a knock on the door, and she allows entry. She is informed of visitors, and Pagos Dalton and Japhet Delmoy enter the room. Roviel expected intrigue, but she didn't think the duchies would unite. Dalton declares that he wants to be a finalist and pledges allegiance to the East and South. Roviel replies that she doesn't like it and reminds them of their defeat. The young man gets angry and asks if she understands the meaning of their proposal. Roviel realizes she is being underestimated and responds coldly. She asks if this means that fidelity is only possible through marriage. In that case, refusal will make them traitors. Another duke tries to smooth things over and speaks of wanting to strengthen her power. He proposes to make the Southeast its support. Roviel sees that he has a persuasive ability and turns to Dalton. She asks to tell her father that his intentions are sincere. She also states that the Duke's second son is not to her taste. She then asks the second young man to stay behind for a conversation. She asks what the South will get if she marries Pagos. The young man replies that a subject's loyalty must be sufficient. Roviel laughs and says she was expecting a different offer. Previously he was a candidate, but now he is only an accompanying person. The young man remains silent and says that he will convey her will to his father. Having sent the guests away, Roviel spent the rest of the evening doing paperwork. Then it was time for the banquet, where the final winner would be announced. Soon the announcement of the Empress's arrival is heard. To the sounds of music, one of the dukes extends his hand to her. He asks if she will do him a favor, and in response, the girl only smiles and invites him to dance. As they dance, she finds herself wondering if he thinks she's beautiful, and then quietly asks Haven to come to her office tomorrow morning. The guy is surprised and says that usually in such cases they call him into the room in the evening. The Empress cuts him off so he won't talk nonsense. The next morning, he comes to the estate, where the girl introduces him to her first secretary. The young man asks if this means that the best secretary has been serving Her Majesty all this time. It turns out that they will now have to meet much more often, and the main character turns to Haven. She asks not to frighten the guy and warns that she will not repeat it, and the Duke assures that he will take this into account. The girl hands him several documents and offers to study them first, asking whether he would approve or reject them in her place. The guy looks over the papers, returns them, and says that he would reject them for 3 reasons. The girl asks which ones exactly, and the Duke starts with the first, claiming that it is not even worth considering. He explains that the tax in question will be abolished anyway due to growing public discontent, and that it would be better to reduce it immediately. Secondly, on paper, it all looks reasonable, but in reality it's complete nonsense, because the Yale lands were recently restored and families are moving there en masse. At the same time, there are already people on hunger strike there, and it is worth finding out what is going on, because it is either a hoax or something much more serious. The girl asks about the third reason, and the Duke replies that first, they must abandon the development of mines in the Delmoy Mountains. It is also necessary to understand the relationship between the 2 territories that want to make these mountains a border. If they don't resolve the issue in time, it could end in a battle for land. The main character realizes that these are the 3 problems she had been overlooking, and Haven's proposed solutions are completely in line with her thoughts, so any words he says now carry weight. The girl invites the guy to have tea with her, and after a while they are left alone. The Empress says that the engagement can be arranged as early as next week. The Duke recalls that at yesterday's banquet, she hinted that there was no need to rush into this. The young lady replies that she has reconsidered her views and asks if he doesn't like it, and the guy assures her that he doesn't mind at all and is ready to do it tomorrow. He adds that the lady looks pleased and the girl replies that it is obvious. After all, how can you be dissatisfied when the only truly useful man is nearby? The guy asks if he really is the only one, and the girl says she's thinking about it. She mentions that after marriage it would be possible to have a lover, and the guy is visibly surprised. He clenches his fists, jumps up from the couch, and declares that he does not intend to look at this. He says that he will not allow her love to be shared with anyone else, and the young lady replies that he has misunderstood everything. It is important to her that as many people as possible are on her side, but the Duke states that if she chooses another husband, then a brutal reprisal will follow, which surprises the main character and explains that it was only about adding someone to the harem. The silver-haired youth interrupts her and says that he will protect Her Majesty, and if the 4 families cross the borders, he promises to bring her their heads. If Grypto encroaches on the borders, he will immediately send troops and will not allow any threat. The main character is shocked and asks if he is hinting to the desire to unite the continent. The guy replies that he will do it immediately if Her Majesty wishes. The girl orders him to calm down and not to play the fool like Eddie, emphasizing that this is an order, and the young man agrees, and she understands that their union will be extremely useful. The young lady places her hand on his palm and says that if he promises something, she will reconsider her decision about the harem. She asks him to promise to always be by her side, to support her, and to stay close until the plunge into eternal sleep separates them. The guy swears his life to her, and the main character is happy about it. After some time, she drinks tea and realizes that choosing Haven was an excellent decision, and she hasn't felt this good in a long time. If his talent is truly that great, the engagement should be arranged as soon as possible, and he should be bound to you by a lifelong contract. But as soon as she puts a piece of cake in her mouth, she feels an unpleasant taste and screams. The girl realizes that even without Eddie's antics, the food is still too bitter, and at the very first meeting with him, she will say everything, even if he doesn't like it. At this moment, a man enters the room and announces that the commander of the Knights has arrived. The main character asks if it is Cecile and orders them to let her in. When the blonde enters, the young lady asks for news, and the commander apologizes for disturbing her, but says that the news is urgent. The main character asks what happened, and the girl replies that it happened just recently. A mass kidnapping took place in Feeland, and 7 people were taken from nearby cities of the Empire. The missing persons are famous figures from different walks of life, and the young lady specifies who exactly they are. The commander lists a professor of legal sciences from the academy, the 3rd daughter of Count Gideon, the famous architect, 75-year-old historian Timoli, but the main character raises her hand and asks Cecile to stop. She says that what she has heard is enough and asks what the motive for the kidnapping is. The commander of the Knights replies that there is already testimony from a witness who saw the abduction of the 4th victim. The witness claimed that the kidnapper said that Her Majesty wanted to see him. The main character clutches her head and realizes that Eddie is behind this. The blonde adds that the abducted people are in Suiton County and are fine. They are going to be released. It's all connected to rumors that Her Majesty intends to create a harem. The girl thinks about this and remembers Haven's words, who will not tolerate such things and does not understand where the rumors came from. She also asks where Edwin is now, and the commander replies that he is at the Palace Stadium. After a little while, the girl comes there, and the guy turns to his sister with a smile. He asks if she has come to see him, and the young lady immediately turns to Eddie. She asks if he wants to tell her something, and the guy pretends not to understand and is surprised at her anger. The girl replies that she learned about the kidnapping of people and their detention in the mansion. The young man says that he did not kidnap anyone, but only offered them work for the royal family. The young lady explains that dragging people without consent is kidnapping, and not letting them go home is false imprisonment. The guy objects that this way they would be loyal until the end of time, and the traitors would have to be put into eternal sleep, because otherwise dangerous people cannot be stopped. The girl is silent and then flicks her brother's face. She tells him to finally wake up and reminds him how many times she asked him not to do such stupid things. Then he orders to set up a meeting and apologize properly. The young man asks if he should ask first and then invite her, and the girl replies that it's okay, as long as he doesn't kidnap anyone else. She realizes that she was gonna hire many more secretaries and officials anyway. The system also needs to be reorganized for the sake of stability, and she suggests the guy go and see how normal people do it. On the way, the girl thinks whether among the people Eddie brought, there are those who would really like to work for her. After all, if you don't follow Haven's will, With his talent, mass reprisals cannot be avoided. At this point, she notices the Duke and asks if he was heading towards her, regardless of his attitude towards the situation. The guy just asks Her Majesty if she likes the jealous type of men. Roviel wonders what's gotten into this guy's head again, and soon they're left alone, where the girl talks about the misunderstanding. She explains that she has no intention of creating a harem, and that these are all just ridiculous rumors. The young man asks if he really has nothing to worry about, and the girl replies that of course, because he is her only one. The guy says that for him too, Her Majesty is the only one. The girl is happy about this, touches a strand of his hair, and the Duke leans against her hand. He asks what happened, and the girl thinks how alluring his look is. She moves closer and kisses him, and when she pulls away, the guy apologizes for his dry lips. The main character continues to look at him, and he asks if he was too hasty. The girl thinks that they are already engaged, and engagement is the first step to marriage. And it is customary for spouses to share one bed, and besides, she promised Haven that there would be no harem. And now she wonders, what if he becomes the only man she will kiss for the rest of her days? The guy asks if he ruined her mood. The girl thinks that even if she kisses him for the rest of her life, she is all for it. She approaches Haven again and calls his name, but at that moment, there is a knock on the door. The main character allows entry and moves away from the Duke. The butler comes in, apologizes for disturbing him, and announces that a marriage proposal has arrived from the Delmoy family. Hearing this, the Duke asks Her Majesty to call the commander of the knights. He says that the lands of Delmoy will be wiped off the face of the earth, and the girl reminds him that she asked him to stay away from Eddie. The young man apologizes, but states that as a duke, he has the right to deal with them. Roviel replies that if he starts a war with them, he can forget about her. The guy is surprised, and the young lady repeats that he is her only one. The Duke is embarrassed, and the girl asks if he can refuse the offer, since she has everything to destroy Delma. She understands that this was the result of their recent provocative moment. After refusing and returning home, the girl receives a report from Cecile about progress in the southwest. Since she and Haven had not yet married and united the North and Finland, the opponents decided that now was the time to act. The girl is confident that Skyer will not get into trouble, so the only option left is for Pagos and Delmoy to unite, which will almost certainly lead to a civil war. In the current situation, these two parties will find themselves on opposite sides of the fence, and that's good news. Especially since Delmoy himself proposed marriage, and such an opportunity couldn't be missed. The girl turns to the Duke and asks him not to worry, as she already has bait for them. Haven replies that he remains curious about what thoughts are going through her head. She then asks if it wouldn't be better to just eliminate the Pagos, and the guy notes with a smile that Her Majesty is much more interesting than he expected. He notices that the girl is trembling, and immediately takes off his jacket. Haven throws it over the lady and says he thought she might be cold. The girl replies that the cold goes away when he takes care of her, and adds that she is fine. She lets him go, and the guy bows, saying that he will look forward to seeing her again. After some time, the princess turns to Count Delmoy and ironically asks if he had already been a bridesmaid. She says that she will be happy for her neighbors, but the young man replies that even if it were a joyful occasion, he doubts that Her Majesty would be as happy if it were her family. Roviel asks if he thinks that becoming her husband will give him more privileges than he has now. The guy is surprised and assures that the proposal is dictated only by admiration for the lady, and the girl silently notes his hypocrisy. She asks what to do about the fact that Duke Dehard is extremely jealous, and she values his feelings. Besides, the news will quickly reach the east, and the girl wonders if Pagos will like it. She also asks if he is afraid of the consequences, and the guy replies that even if they follow. The Delmoy are not related to Pagos, and the main character smiles, agreeing with this. She adds that Delmoy has been suffering for about 10 years since the Mises invasion. And despite the assistance of the Duchy of Pagos, surveillance of its lands still continues. The 4 duchies of the 7 Hills were tasked with guarding the empire's borders, as their military might provide it an advantage even without the support of the capital, while Delmoy's southern borders had been destroyed by the machinations of Mises. In difficult times for the south, the east, Duke Pagos, came to the rescue, and this support during the crisis changed the relationship between the 2 duchies. But good is quickly forgotten, and the south decided to regain its honor and position. Now the guy says that Pagos is no match for Delmoy, and the girl asks what he means. He recalls that, quite recently, high-quality ore deposits were discovered in the lands of the Viscounty of Hildel. However, the territory ended up in eastern Alcas, right on the border of Mount Delpin. The aristocracy of the East and South argued for a long time about who rightfully owned this source. Hildel asked Delmoy for help, Alkis asked Pagos for help, but the result was the same. The South remains indebted to the East, and the girl notes that the situation has changed over the past 10 years. Now neither the North nor Fuland will tolerate the humiliation of Delma, and if Pagos tries to settle the conflict, the Empire will intervene under the pretext of peace, and the discontent of the Southern aristocracy will reach its peak. If Delmoy can be controlled, and the Pagos ardor tamed in this way, she will only benefit. The guy says that, like last time, he will quote her words and then leaves. The main character understands that she has done everything possible, and now the choice is up to Delma. Suddenly, her body stops obeying her, and the girl sinks to the floor, and the servant calls for a doctor in panic. She feels even worse and closes her eyes. The girl recalls that she lived her first life alone, trying not to take it to heart, until one day she heard it, that she is called the Ice Queen, because of whom a small child suffers. She doesn't know how she came back to life, but she decided that this time everything would be different. Now she has a brother by her side who laughs even without a reason, and a caring husband who helps her with everything. Even if Eddie keeps putting potions in her food, she will still eat it and live as long as she can. The girl opens her eyes and hears someone saying that they will not allow her to fall into eternal sleep. The guy begs her to open her eyes and not repeat past mistakes, but she just strokes her brother's head. He is surprised and asks if his sister has woken up, since she shouldn't be immersed in eternal sleep like that. Roviel doesn't understand what he's talking about and looks away. There she sees the worried Duke and asks how long she lay there, and he answers that it was about an hour, after which she clarifies the doctor's words. The Duke says that it looks like she has been poisoned, and the doctor immediately turns to the young lady. He asks about your health and asks you to report any pain, even slight ones. The girl talks about nausea and chills, adds that it has become harder to breathe, and asks if he knows what kind of poison it is. The doctor replies that the symptoms point to the poison jurial. The Duke asks about an antidote, but the doctor says that one does not exist. The brother grabs the doctor and demands that he be created immediately, but he explains that this is not the issue. There is no need for an antidote, because Her Majesty will recover without it. The doctor admits that he himself is surprised, because the girl's body independently resists the poison, which is extremely dangerous. The Duke asks if she can handle it on her own, and the main character says that it's not so easy to put her into eternal sleep. The doctor objects, explaining that the poison is capable of putting a person into eternal sleep in just a couple of hours. The brother remembers the protective Jepiton and says that he gave it to his sister for the last 3 years. The drug supports immunity and helps fight toxins. The girl asks what he fed her, and the doctor only notes that it was good. He plans to create medicine based on Hepaton, and the girl adds that she is glad that the poison did not work. She remembers that the cake was very bitter, and her brother asks if this is what he is talking about. He says that he asked the servants not to add anything, and the young lady answers him only one thing. Even though she was against his potions, they saved her life today, so the topic can be closed. She reminds him that there is a meeting scheduled for today and asks to call the secretary. The Duke comes closer and asks what she is talking about. After all, she had only just woken up, almost plunging into eternal sleep. He insists that she needs rest, and her brother also asks her to keep quiet, but the girl says that she feels fine. She states that the matter is urgent and everything needs to be resolved today. Then Haven takes everything upon himself and asks her to just lie down, and Eddie agrees with him. He adds that he did not become her husband for idleness and advises her to be careful with food while he searches for the culprit, and the Duke confirms that he will help if necessary. As they are about to leave, Roviel calls out to his brother and asks him to wait. She recalls that when he woke up, he said not to repeat it. The girl asks what he meant, and the young man falls silent for a moment. He then hugs his sister and jokes about whether her hearing has been damaged, suggesting that they call the doctor again. Roviel decides that she was just imagining things and asks her not to worry, and her brother tells her to tell him about any pain, and she agrees. She asks him to focus on catching the criminal first, and the guy promises to sort it out. When he leaves, the girl closes her eyes and understands that there will be a commotion in the palace. After a while, she opens her eyes again and feels a hand on her head. She realizes it is Haven, and he asks worriedly about her condition. He says the fever is still there, and the girl asks how the meeting went. The guy jokes that someone clearly needs a cure for workaholism. The girl replies that the situation of the Seven Hills is still unstable, and now is not the time to be a lazy empress, to which the Duke asks if she wants to be one. She says that she wants to because she doesn't like an idle life, and the young man promises to make every effort. To make her dream come true, he then hands over the medicine from the court physician. He warns that the taste is unpleasant and advises her to drink it immediately, and the young lady does so. He then gives her a candy, noting that she didn't even wince, and the girl replies that she's used to bitterness and asks for a report. The Duke hands over the papers and says that information about the Brandel River is on the last page. The girl notices that the river is shallow, but often floods, and due to the inaction of the previous emperor, they spend enormous amounts of money. The guy says the workers asked for the project to be cut back, but she says that won't happen. The Duke explains that it is not a matter of money, but of timing, and he has promised that there will be no problems with labor. The girl asks why he said that, and the guy reminds her of her plan to send troops there under the guise of building a dam. The young lady smiles and understands that she needs the dam on Brandel for 2 reasons. This included arranging the river and placing the army between southern Delmoy and eastern Pagos, and it only took 1 meeting for Haven to understand her intention to pit Hildal and Alcus against each other. The girl says that she enjoys dealing with an intelligent partner, and the guy replies that he is glad to hear it. She pauses for a moment, and then asks the Duke a question. She asks if the tournament was the first time he met Eddie, and he confirms it, after which she asks if they saw each other later. He replies that no, because she forbade her to meet with him alone, and the girl remarks that it is strange, as if Eddie has been following him for a long time, which surprises Haven. She says she can't explain why he was chosen otherwise, unless they have similar tastes. The young lady then confesses that she really likes the Duke, and so does her brother. The guy replies that he doesn't know whether to be happy or scared, but the girl assures him that she is speaking sincerely. She asks if he's still not happy and if it's because of her brother, and Haven replies that he thinks Eddie is a good brother. He admits that sometimes it is difficult for him to understand the reason for such a strong attachment to her. The young lady replies that Eddie has always been like this, because he is just a child longing for love. After this, the Duke asks for forgiveness, but immediately states that, in his opinion, the young man was raised with excessive affection, which is why he grew up like a bull, incapable of making decisions on his own. The main character realizes that Edwin was a completely different person in his past life. He grew up without parental love, in the hands of servants, and his busy and cold sister paid almost no attention to him. The girl clearly remembers only a few episodes from her past life, and one of them is the day she became a countess. Then the young lady grew tired of listening to the ambiguous speeches and ridicule of the imperial family, passed off as congratulations, and dreamed only of quickly returning to her room and falling onto her bed. When Roviel returned home, she saw Edwin sitting on the stairs with a stuffed rabbit she had played with as a child. It was late at night, he did not sleep, probably wanting to congratulate her, but the girl broke down. She asked why he wasn't sleeping and went off to her room. Back then, Roviel hated Eddie because, as the youngest, he was free of any responsibility. She regretted it until she fell into eternal sleep, and having received a second chance, that same day she hugged Eddie tightly and sincerely thanked him. Now the young lady says that her brother is just funny, and the Duke should get used to it. The boy asks if this is an order, and admits he didn't expect to see Her Majesty like this. The girl asks how he sees her. He replies that she is strange, and was so even before the Count's visit. He admits that he wanted to meet the lady, although he didn't think it would happen at the tournament. Roviel asks why, and the boy replies that he was interested in finding out who did what he wanted to do. Then Roviel asks directly if Haven wants the imperial throne. She thinks that no matter how much she likes him, she can't let him be around if he wants to take her place. She knows better than anyone what a person is capable of for the sake of power, and in her thoughts, she asks him to answer negatively. The guy smiles and says that he just wanted to get rid of the former emperor. The throne never interested him, and he was planning to eliminate the emperor before the war with Krypton, but power changed. Within a few months of the new reign, the empire had changed beyond recognition, and he wanted to see the one who had managed to do it. The young lady says that he must be disappointed, but the boy replies that he is not and cannot imagine a more worthy ruler. This surprises Roviel a little, and she quietly says, "Thank God. Otherwise, she would have to leave the throne and start a fight against her own husband." But the guy assures that there is nothing to worry about. Roviel says he believes him. He pauses briefly and asks why. Why does she so easily trust a man who entered the palace, where she could be put into eternal sleep with poison? He asks how she can trust him and whether she even knows what medicine he just gave her and why she took it so calmly. Roviel replies that she drank it because she knows it is an antidote. She asks if she is mistaken, and the Duke confirms that this is indeed the case. The girl then asks why he even brought it up, and again says that she trusts Haven. She understands that she feels guilty for his reaction, and it's not a matter of blind faith. She trusts her brother's choice because Eddie would not allow anyone who could cause harm to be near her. The Duke turns to Her Majesty again and says that he likes her too. Roviel replies that this is good, and the guy adds with a smile that for now, in the future. He says that he will definitely win her heart, but when he reaches for a kiss, the girl stops him. She states that she doesn't like people who steal things from her, and suggests saying it differently. The young man replies that he will do everything to make her love him, and Roviel says that it is better this way. He leans towards her again, but at that moment there is a knock on the door and the girl allows him to enter. The butler appears and announces that the chief knight and the first secretary request an audience. She orders them to be admitted. The Duke says he will return later. As he leaves, he casts a heavy glance at those who entered. Roviel asks Cecile why she was looking for her. The commander of the knights asks to punish her for letting the rats out of the palace. Roviel replies that she is perfectly fine as a commander, and he asks what kind of punishment we can talk about if Cecile was busy running her errands. The girl says that she should have guessed anyway, and then Roviel gently touches her cheek. She says that the criminal has not yet been found, so there is no point in blaming yourself. Roviel also asks how Eddie is, and the knight commander apologizes but says he is mad. Eddie ordered no one to leave the palace, but even so, finding the culprit will be difficult. Whoever served the poisoned pie was clearly an unusual adversary, but he made a mistake. He should have put her into eternal sleep right away. After some time, Roviel tells Eddie to catch the rat, and Cecile's task is to find whoever sent it. After this, she turns to the secretary and says that she was poisoned. She asks why he is crying, and the guy begs her not to fall into eternal sleep and promises to work even harder, if only she would live. Roviel replies that he will live, wipes the ink from his face, and says that at this rate he will most likely lose his life. He replies that he has no intention of falling into eternal sleep. Soon evening arrives. The Duke brings food and says it's time for dinner, and they sit down at the table. The girl says that this poison doesn't scare her, but it does scare him, and if he gets poisoned, she'll be in trouble. The guy replies that she is still weak, and the poison is now dangerous for her too, so he will try her food until she recovers. Roviel asks him not to force himself, but he turns to her again. He says the poison was too dangerous, though not suitable for inducing eternal sleep. It is too bitter and immediately gives itself away, and the young man asks why she ate half of it. The girl replies that she thought it was another unusual recipe. The Duke then asks her not to eat anything with a strange taste in the future. Roviel realizes she's gotten used to it because of her brother's medicine. She wonders how to distinguish his additives from someone else's poison next time. The Duke says that she should ask the Count to warn her about the medicines, and the girl wonders if he is reading her mind. Haven adds that there is nothing to be done and asks to eat with him in the future. Roviel thinks that when he becomes her husband, he will eat 3 times a day next to her, but for now it is better to keep quiet about it. The guy jokes that if the Count gives him more medicine, he will become healthier, and the girl replies that then he should stop if he doesn't want to. That evening, the girl lies in bed and says she's hot. The Duke replies that he knew about the heat, but such intense heat at night is dangerous. Eddie tells his sister that he can't believe they did this to her. The Duke lightly hits the Count on the head and orders him to search for the criminal. After her recovery, the medications have already been taken, and all that remains is to bring down the temperature. He asks Eddie to help, and he agrees, applying a wet bandage to his sister. The next morning, the girl opens her eyes and sees a worried Duke and brother. Eddie asks if she's okay, and Haven also asks about her condition. Roviel sits up and says she feels fine, just a little hungry. Haven touches her forehead and tells her that the fever has gone down, and her brother breathes a sigh of relief. He admits how worried he was. The girl apologizes for bothering him, and the guy says they can get down to business now. Roviel guesses what he is up to, and immediately says no. She asks him not to do it, no matter what, but he replies that he hasn't said anything yet. She repeats that she's against it in any case. The boy nods and says he understands. Then he adds that the poisoner must be found and punished. Roviel replies that Cecile is also conducting an investigation, and asks that she share information with her and not frighten the guards. He agrees, but asks for increased security and says he'll accompany her even while she changes clothes and bathes. She asks if it has to be him. The guy replies that yes, because there is no knight stronger than him in the palace. He promises to bring one eventually, but for now he asks them to wait. Then he opens the window to air out the room. Rovio drinks tea and realizes that she is tired of lying around and wants to do something useful. She is also worried about her secretary, who has too much work on him, and she decides to visit him. She suggests Haven look in on Caleb, but he says the secretary is not in the palace today. Rovio is surprised and asks if he is sick. The Duke replies that no. The Count simply threatened to plunge into eternal sleep anyone who brings work to the palace. Therefore, there are no reports or meetings, and Her Majesty can rest. The girl says that she is fine and asks to bring everyone back. The Duke agrees, but warns that he will inform the Count if she meets anyone. She orders him not to, but he apologizes and says he values the Count's trust. Rovio reminds him that she told him to stay away from him, but the guy says that's not the point. He explains that the decision to relieve her of work today was his personal initiative. He asks if one day off can really destroy an empire. He then kneels before Her Majesty. He says that she saved the 7 hills from the previous emperor and raised the empire, and he understands her affection for her. But she cannot be everywhere at once because she is an empress, not a god. Besides, the fever hasn't gone away yet, and he asks her to rest today. Rovio realizes she never considered herself a god. Her position is a huge responsibility, and she's just trying to do what she has to do. But Haven is right. And maybe she really should stop worrying about the empire for a little while. His words make sense, and if she works without rest, the problems will only get worse, so the girl decides to make today a day off. She adds that in urgent matters, she wants to see reports, and orders the secretaries to return to work. At the same time, Rovio admits that she doesn't know what she does during her rest, because sitting around doing nothing is tiring for her, and besides work, she has almost no activities. The young man falls silent, embarrassed, and carefully says that in that case they could continue where they were interrupted last time. And the girl at first doesn't understand what he's talking about, but then remembers how he reached out to her for a kiss. Coming out of her thoughts, she notices the Duke approaching again and closes her eyes. But at that very moment, there is a knock at the door, and the young lady regretfully says that this will have to be postponed again. She allows entry, and the butler announces that he has brought a list of medicines issued by the Count. The girl sees that it contains 3 medications for each week, 5 for each season, and several more for annual use. The Duke jokes that with such a set, she won't fear any illness. He also notices that the list includes Cynthia's flowers, which few people know about. Rovio asks what they are. The Duke explains that this flower grows only in one place in the north and is a valuable medicine, which means the Count has done a lot of research. It is immediately clear how highly he values the young lady, and the Duke even admits that he envies such a brother. Rovio replies that her brother is indeed very concerned about her health. The Duke says she is his only family, so such concern is not surprising. The girl understands that she knows what is in Edwin's soul, because he is all that is left of her family. And if he disappears again, and there is no news, she will not survive it. But even if we put aside the value of family, who usually behaves like Eddie? If she thinks about it, there's something strange about it all, and she remembers his words about how it shouldn't happen again. Not understanding what he meant, the girl asks the Duke to call Eddie. She realizes she hadn't thought about this before, but now that she's been given a chance to live a better life, it's time to get answers. After a little while, the guy opens the door slightly, hesitating whether to enter. Rovio calls out to him, and he immediately runs up to his sister. He apologizes, and the girl asks with a smile if he has already managed to do something wrong. Eddie says she probably means his orders to keep everyone out of the palace, and she asks if he just wanted to give her a break. He confirms, and she mentions a mountain of medicines. He assumes she's talking about his preparation of means to put any duke into eternal sleep in the event of betrayal. Rovio is surprised and asks what he is even talking about. Eddie asks if she found out that he got rid of Count Belfort, and she tells him to stop. She talks about how much he does behind her back, and the guy asks if she's angry, after which she asks him to sit down. Eddie sits down and promises he won't do it again. Rovio replies he's not angry, but just wants to ask something. She understands that her younger brother doesn't care what she does, but she is amazed at how sensitive he is to her health. Perhaps he knows that she once fell ill and fell into eternal sleep. But if so, how could he know? Since even in his past life, he had not returned to the county before this event. She wonders if he heard about her illness from someone else and what he did after that. Or, like her, he returned to the past with all his memories. So Rovio asks Eddie outright if he too has been reincarnated. The guy is surprised and asks if she remembers her past life. The girl replies that she remembers everything up until she falls into eternal sleep. Eddie says that this is impossible because the time stone was only supposed to preserve his memory. Roviel wonders what kind of stone it is, and her brother looks at her again. He asks if she is sure she remembers everything, and she confirms, asking if he knows the reason. She just asks him not to say that he turned back time. Eddie says that the Duke once told him a legend about the possibility of turning back time, and he had no intention of testing it. But when he returned, the girl was already immersed in eternal sleep, and on the day of the funeral, he found her letter. He still remembers every word and regrets it, because he didn't think that she was waiting for him. He was sure that she hated him, and therefore did not interfere in the family's affairs. Roviel asks why she would hate him, and he replies that she suffered every day and he didn't help. On the day he came of age, people came to him, showered him with compliments, and said that it was time to return power to the family. He adds that if he had known what this would lead to, he would have put them all into eternal sleep, and Roviel asks if that is why he ran away. Eddie replies that she worked so hard to raise the family, and he was afraid that she would think that he wanted to take her place. Then Roviel jumps up and hits him on the head. She cries out with tears, saying what a fool he is, and that he ran away because of such nonsense, because she had been looking for him for so long. The guy, confused, asks her not to cry, and she screams in response that she is not crying at all. Eddie says he found out about her search later, and she asks how he left without a penny and where he was all this time. He replies that he went to the north, settled there, and became friends with Duke Dehard, and later learned about the Time Stone. They were planning a rebellion, and he came to warn her, fearing that she would interfere. But he was informed that the girl had already fallen into eternal sleep. And now Roviel was hugging his brother tightly. She understands that he has grown up and become taller than her, but he still behaves like a child. Now it is clear to her why he cried so bitterly then, and how he was able to overthrow the former emperor so quickly. Perhaps the preparation in his past life made it easy for him, and he knew who would support the rebellion. He gave her the throne that was rightfully his, and Roviel wonders why he is always associated with rebellions. She asks if he received the Time Stone from the Duke, and if Haven remembers his past life. But Eddie is doubtful. He adds that if the Duke remembered, he would have immediately plunged him into eternal sleep, and Roviel asks why. Eddie replies that he stole that stone, and the girl sits down on the sofa. She doesn't know where to begin with her scolding, and says he invited the Duke to the tournament because he knew him before. Eddie replies that he is the strongest man of them all. He doesn't seek power and won't harm his sister, but Roviel reminds him that the Duke was preparing a rebellion. Eddie replies that the Duke simply hated the former emperor, and all this happened before the war, and the girl asks what war they are talking about. Eddie explains that Zilton had allied with Gripton and was about to attack, while the previous emperor stood by. In the end, everyone decided to get rid of him, because with such a ruler, there would be no victory. He says the noise will start in about a year and suggests uniting the continent now. He promises to make her the first empress of the entire continent, and Roviel is stunned. Eddie says that he has already decided everything and is now ready to do anything for her. But the girl refuses, saying that she appreciates his concern but she does not need the unification of the continent. He replies that he will still give it to her because war is inevitable and he must win. Roviel pulls his brother by the cheeks and asks him to listen. She says that she is content with ruling the empire of the Seven Hills and orders him not to do so. She understands that the unification does not concern her, but in 4 years, Gripton will invade the empire. If they unite with Zilton, the northern lands will become a battlefield. Then Haven and Edwin will leave the capital, and even Fyland won't be able to hold back Pagos and Delmoy. Roviel sighs, and her brother asks what she's worried about. She replies that she heard about the war, and that's why she's worried. Eddie says that with the Duke they will definitely win, but the girl asks if he thought about those who will lose. She says that war is not only about swords, but also about consequences, the growth of territories, and even more responsibilities. After this, Roviel says that he will first catch the culprit, and they will take advantage of the chance to weaken the East. She adds that if Pagos is behind this, she should be informed so that she can prepare herself as well. Eddie agrees and says he will go, and before leaving she calls out to him. She talks about the past days and apologizes for turning away from him, not out of hatred, but out of fatigue, and she admits that she has wanted to say this for a long time. She thanks him for being there and giving her a chance, and he replies that she raised him. He promises to return soon and asks her to rest. Opening the door, he meets the Duke, and Haven sees that the guy is almost crying with joy. Upon entering, the Duke begins to talk about her brother, but Roviel interrupts him, calling Eddie too cute and claiming it's true. Haven agrees, and the girl adds that she really likes him and finds him charming. The Duke asks her to take her words back, but she laughs and calls him to sit next to her. She realizes that thanks to Haven, she got another chance, and she wants to thank him and apologize, but she can't find the words. She says she will treat him well, and that if necessary, he can ask for anything, regardless of the price. Haven apologizes and admits that he wishes he could understand why she suddenly said that. Roviel replies that there is no other reason, she just likes him, and he thinks that he is happy to hear this sweet lie. She also recalls that they discussed a lot with the Count, and he told her not to worry, because the two of them would personally deal with this war. The young man says he doesn't share the Count's views on everything, but he's forced to agree with him on this point. The girl asks if he's referring to how Zilton and Gripton united and invaded the Empire. In response, he only smiles, and the main character notes that he looks amazingly confident. The Duke adds that, as he has already said, the North is still living in a state of war, and all the necessary preparations have long been completed. The girl replies that she's glad he's reliable, but she needs to check everything thoroughly herself. The boy says he was prepared for this conversation and reminds her that after the Seven Hills defeat Zilton, the other empires will begin to act as well. He asks if she is thinking about uniting the continent, and the young lady remarks that his thoughts are remarkably similar to Eddie's. The girl confidently answers that no, but the guy still suggests at least trying. The young lady abruptly refuses, screams, and turns away from him. The Duke just laughs and says that he seems to have fallen in love with her determination. She replies that no words will save him, but at that moment he takes her hand. The guy kisses her hand and says that if Her Majesty does not want it, he will never force her. He adds that if she changes her mind, she can tell him at any time, and he will always be on her side. The young lady thinks how impudent he is, but notices that after this conversation she feels better. When the girl enters the secretary's office, he is lying on papers, almost as if he is dead. Upon seeing Her Majesty, he immediately jumps up and turns to her with alarm. She calms him down and tells him not to cry because she is here, and the guy is worried whether she should rest more and whether everything is okay with her. After a short while, the girl sits down at her desk and asks Haven to pick up documents reflecting the intentions of other empires and bring them. The guy agrees, and the young lady turns to Caleb and informs him that in the near future, priority will be given to documents in the southeastern direction. Caleb reminds us that today we need to approve the papers sent from the palace. The girl takes the documents and asks what they are about, and the guy replies that they concern Her Majesty's engagement. She realizes that the engagement is scheduled for tomorrow and is surprised how everything happened so quickly. But the girl realizes that if she refuses, she will disappoint Haven. She signs the documents and understands that neither engagement nor marriage come easy. After this, the girl deals with all the urgent matters that have accumulated during her illness. At the afternoon meeting, a proposal is put forward to build a dam on the Brandel River. They decide to send about 5,000 soldiers to the south to support the project, and, after hiring a professional inspector, to begin the transfer of troops. The girl is going to talk to Eddie, but she is told that he will return late, and she wonders where he has disappeared to. Soon she is contacted with the message that the head of the inspection team has arrived. The main character tells Cecile that it's okay and goes to her, since she was going to call her anyway. The blonde apologizes and admits that she was unable to gather the necessary information. The young lady understands that after the failed poisoning attempt, there have been no more suspicious actions, which means that whoever wanted to plunge her into eternal sleep is probably aiming for the throne and is currently lying low. In any case, it is obvious that there is someone who wishes for her to fall into eternal sleep. And if it's not about seizing an empire, then the reason is personal hatred. The girl wonders whether it is even possible to decide on such things simply because of hatred. Cecile asks if the lady has any suspicions, but she replies that she does not. The circle of suspects is too large, and the commander is surprised. And the girl understands that the first to go are those whom she threatened to decapitate, then those whose information she used, and the people whose businesses collapsed because of it. Although her family became richer, there were many more grievances and enemies. The Knight's commander offers to check everyone, but the girl refuses and says that if there was a criminal among them, Edwin would have found out about it long ago. She tells Cecile to focus on Pagos, keep an eye on Delma's every move, and continue checking into Zilton and Gripton's connections, and she agrees. The main character asks if anyone knows where her brother is now, and hears that Count Sutton left for the west yesterday afternoon, which makes her wonder about the reason. Cecile offers to find out the details, but the girl refuses because they don't have enough people, and she is sure that he will return himself when he finishes his business. After this, the blonde asks when Operation White Owl will begin. Roviel realizes that the Knight Commander not only came up with a way to intensify the conflict between Hildel and Alcades, but even gave the operation a name. The essence of Operation White Owl lies in the long-standing dispute between these territories over the mines of the Delping Mountains. This is a carefully planned sabotage aimed at crushing Pagos and Delma. The plan is for workers dressed as county people to pretend to mine ore, which is supposed to anger the Hildel family. This will make Hildel decide that Count Alkes has insulted them, after which they will declare war on him for these lands. The girl understands that the rest of the details will need to be discussed with Eddie because there are too many questions. Thanks to the county of Delmoy, which held back Pagos and Hildel, Alkes eventually gained the rights to extract ore from the mines. And if she shakes hands with Hildel and Delma, the conflict in the southeast will move into a new phase. The young lady says that the first team will leave next week, and they cannot delay action. The Knight Commander assures that he will personally lead the detachment, and the heroine agrees and orders a report on the plan's approval to be sent to Viscount Hildel. The knight agrees, and the girl wonders if all the work for today is finished. She remembers that she had not yet prepared the engagement documents and had completely forgotten about it. The young lady is lost in thought, but suddenly hears a knock on the door and turns around. She sees the Duke and realizes that he has come just in time, after which she asks him to go with her to one place. The girl realizes that despite being busy, their engagement is tomorrow, and she has never given her fiancé a gift. He worked so hard to get into the palace that he deserves a reward for his work. The guy opens one of the doors and asks if that's where they need to go, and the girl confirms. She thinks that she won't have to go far, because this place is full of ancestral treasures, and they go inside together. The young lady says that there are many jewels here, and some of them look truly amazing. Haven points to one of the objects and says that it is a volho, the symbol of one of the 7 founding families of the empire. This is the legendary bird that the Trebia family once used to seize power over the royal family. The main character looks at the statue and wonders if this is really the same legendary bird. It also occurs to her that one of her eyes was sold by the former emperor. The girl understands that Haven could have chosen a much more expensive thing, but he clearly liked this bird. She says that if he likes it, she will give him this bird. This will be her engagement gift, and if not, he can choose something else. The guy replies that there is no need for this and asks what he did to deserve such a gift, but the young lady only insists that he choose. Then he says that if she really wants to give him a gift, he would like to spend more time with her, and the girl asks in surprise how much more. Haven replies that at least an hour a day, and says that he wants to be close to Her Majesty no matter what. The young lady thinks he looks too sincere and doesn't understand why. She realizes that she makes him spend all day sorting through documents. They even eat together, fearing further poisoning. But it is still unclear what the real reason is. Why does the Duke want to be near her, even during rest periods? And she says that an hour a day will not be a problem. But she still doesn't understand what he meant when he talks about spending the whole day with her. The guy replies that they should gradually get to know each other, as they did yesterday, and the girl understands that she only knows about her fiancé, his hard work, and the warmth of his lips. She agrees, but asks him to choose a gift anyway, because she also wants to give him something. Haven looks at the bird's eye and says that if she insists, he will take the pebble. The young lady thinks that he chose this anyway, although it is a small thing. So the evening with Haven comes, and the girl suggests they rest before moving on, and he agrees. The young lady sits down, and the Duke notices that Her Majesty moves too little. She replies that a sedentary lifestyle is normal for her, but he says that it is harmful to health. Roviel reminds him that he himself spoke of her long life, looking at the amount of medicine, but Haven replies that he underestimated her endurance. The girl says that even if she looks weak, she copes with her responsibilities and lives well, and then notes that Eddie will not be returning again today. Every time she doesn't see Eddie, she gets a bad feeling, and the Duke asks if she's talking about the Count. He adds that, in his opinion, this is not a person worth worrying about. The girl replies that she worries about everything, but definitely not about this child. After which, Haven accepts this, and she smiles and asks about his family. The boy says that he has no siblings and is an only child, and the girl wonders who rules the duchy then. He replies that it is his uncle, and she remarks that he must trust him a lot. Haven says that his uncle was among those who wanted him to fall into eternal sleep in Finland, but as a ruler, he is reliable. The main character is surprised and says that his immersion into eternal sleep would be a huge loss for the Seven Hills, so he is obliged to live long. She asks how the uncle could even wish such a thing on his nephew, and whether she should intervene, but the guy replies that perhaps he does not consider him a relative. The young lady asks for an explanation, but the young man remains silent and runs his hand through his hair. She notices his ash-gray hair, even though everyone in the Dahard family has black hair and eyes. The girl says that this is nonsense, because hair color doesn't mean anything, and Haven replies that after his birth, his mother didn't come to her senses for a long time, and he only got to the castle at the age of 2. Both his parents are brunettes, but he is not. So many doubt his relationship with the Dahards, including his uncle. The young lady is outraged at how much harm was done to the child and says that this should be punished, and the uncle should have all his hair pulled out, but the boy replies that he doesn't care. The girl states that this is out of the question, since they insulted him and his mother, and she will definitely make them shut up. The boy admits that it is true. He was adopted, and after his parents plunged into eternal sleep, only he and Her Majesty know about it. The girl asks what this has to do with her desire to silence everyone, and adds that his uncle could do with cooling his ardor. The Duke only smiles and asks for mercy, saying that if he becomes her husband, he will renounce his uncle's ducal title, and he will be embarrassed after her punishment. The young lady realizes that his smile does not make things any easier, and is surprised that she only now learns of his intention to renounce the duchy. She wonders if it really has to be that complicated, and if it's really that hard to hide an adoption as a duke. But then he realizes that the matter is different, because adopted children are also children, and as long as he has a title and rules well, everything is fine. She asks why he participated in the tournament then, and whether it was for the sake of passing the title to a biological relative, but the Duke replies that the reason is different, and he realized something thanks to one person. He learned that to prove his mastery, he had to take responsibility, and as a protector, he came to serve Her Majesty. The main character is surprised and says that this man was right, and the young man adds that he is truly outstanding. She no longer cares whether Haven came with plans or was simply running away from uncertainty, because the main thing is that her future husband is not a coward. The young lady tells him not to worry about anything, because he will become her husband and the lands of Dahard are part of her empire and she will protect him. The boy replies that he will become Her Majesty's sword, and the girl laughs, saying that he speaks like her brother, and now she will have 2 swords. Haven smiles, and the girl stands up and offers him her hand. She says that it's already late and suggests going back, and the guy agrees. They return to the palace, but later Eddie still doesn't show up for the ceremony. The girl thought that he would definitely come to the engagement, but after his words about a trip to the West, she was worried not so much about her brother as about the West itself. She entrusted Eddie with an army, but now she is forced to choose a leader herself and send soldiers under the pretext of building a dam, maintaining the legend until his return. One of the 4 powerful ducal families is approaching destruction, and this is the first step towards the erasure of Eastern Pagos. With Pagos gone, his riches will become a coveted prize, and the tax-free life of the 4 duchies will end. The girl realizes that the mere thought of Pagos' wealth makes her content. A young lady enters the hall and sees her future husband smiling at her. She smiles back and thinks that perhaps there is one issue that should be addressed, namely, the arrogant Duke Dahard, who ignored the engagement invitation. They approach the throne, and the priest announces that, by order of the Empress, the Duke is granted the title of Marquis. The girl looks at the Dahard family and is surprised by their tense faces and the lack of congratulations, regretting that her uncle never came. She understands that if necessary, she would get rid of him if he started to get impudent, but he is still not there. The priest announces that Empress Rovielle Satan and Duke Dahard of Haven are now engaged. After some time, the girl approaches one of the aristocrats and says that today is a wonderful day. He asks in shock if it is really Her Majesty herself, and the others immediately disperse. The man seemed not to believe that the Empress was addressing him specifically. The girl, smiling, makes it clear that she has come to see him, and asks why not congratulate the Duke. The atmosphere remains tense, and the man hesitates before turning to face Haven. He thinks that since this is an order from Her Majesty, congratulations are obligatory, although he doubts whether this is a farewell. After this, the aristocrats joyfully congratulate the couple and say how harmonious they look and how important this is for the empire. The young lady looks at the table and realizes that the reaction was not at all what she expected. During the meal, she decides to think about what happened later. When Haven was a child, he was surrounded by people who doubted his origins. He was indeed adopted, but he grew up to be a worthy duke who carried out his duties well. The girl wonders if he talked about how he dealt with ill-wishers after receiving the title. She wonders what he did, and at this time the guy asks if she needs anything. Rovio replies that no, and only asks him to eat well and not to be shy. The other aristocrats at the table sit tensely, but the Duke only needs to look at them. How they immediately smile, and the girl is surprised at how quickly they change. Later, the commander of the knights congratulates Her Majesty and says that she heard that the Empress wanted to see her. The heroine replies that yes, and asks about Haven's relationship with the northern nobles. The commander clarifies whether she means Duke de Hard and says that she has heard rumors. It's as if the Duke considers the northern nobles parasites and keeps them under strict control, which seems to be expected. The girl says that she also heard about the rumors surrounding his birth. The blonde explains that while Haven was still young, his uncle tried, the current deputy of the Duke, tried his best to get rid of his nephew. The commander seemed to want to add something else, but fell silent, and the young lady asked him to continue. She recounts that on the day of his coming of age, Haven shaved off the Duke of Tride's beard with a sword. They say he was aiming for the neck, but stopped at the beard, and Rovio understands that he was capable of extreme measures. Be that as it may, the engagement was a success, and Haven became the reserve ruler of the Empire of the Seven Hills. The 5,000-strong army reached the southeast and headed towards the Brandel River. Negotiations with the 7 talents stolen by Edwin bore fruit, and she attracted several valuable people. Architect Ninzel enthusiastically took up the construction of the dam, and soon, Edwin returned and asked his sister if she had left the meeting too early. The young lady notices that her brother has returned with an impressive blonde girl. Roviel reproaches him for being away for so long and asks if she really forbade him from leaving for so long, and he agrees. She pulls at his cheeks and is indignant that he was gone for 10 days, and he, with difficulty speaking, apologizes. The girl sighs, and the boy asks if she is angry. He says he didn't do it on purpose, but she warns him that if he did it on purpose, he would have gone into eternal sleep. She seriously asks if something happened that made him late, but the guy assures him that everything is fine. Then she asks who this lady is, and he explains that he has been looking for a poison specialist for a long time and has finally found her. He convinced her to come and introduces her formally, saying that he is her new personal knight. After this, there is silence, and the Empress reminds that she forbade Eddie to kidnap people. The guy assures that everything is different, and the girl herself agreed to become a bodyguard. The young lady asks if he is serious, and the brother assures him that he is not lying, after which they look at the blonde. She introduces herself and says that she is glad to meet you, but at that moment, the commander of the knights runs into the room and apologizes for the urgent intrusion. She reports that the Duke's heir, Janice Skyer, has been kidnapped and is now in Philand. We are talking about the second daughter of Duke Skyer, who was last seen quite recently. The main character looks at the blonde in surprise, but she just smiles. She says her name is Janice Skyer, and it's nice to meet you. Everyone falls silent again, and the young lady's brother suddenly leaves the room. He says that he loves his sister very much, and after he leaves, the girl sighs and asks for Janice's name. The blonde confirms, and Roviel asks if she wants to become her personal knight. Janice replies that she will protect Her Majesty and serve faithfully, and the girl accepts her, giving her her first task. She orders that the bastard be taken away, and the blonde agrees. As Janice leaves, the young lady asks the knight commander when the Duke will arrive in Philand. Cecile replies that in 3 or 4 days, and Roviel asks if the Duke knows about Eddie's actions. Having received confirmation, she wonders why her brother did this, because the girl does not look like a prisoner. The commander explains that it all started with Janice Skyer's escape from the Western Duchy. Janice, the Duke's second daughter, was superior to her brother and sister from childhood. She was raised as an heir, but she ran away the day after she came of age. Upon learning that his daughter had been seen with Eddie, the Duke went to Philand to get her back. Because of the previous kidnappings, he decided that Eddie was guilty this time too. The young lady asks if her brother is innocent, and Cecile confirms that he is. The girl says that an adult has the right to decide for himself, and suggests visiting these two. On the street, the main character sees them fighting. Eddie screams that she's crazy for pulling out the sword. Janice responds by demanding that he shut up and follow her, and he becomes indignant. She claims that Her Majesty herself named him that, and Eddie argues that doesn't give her the right. The blonde replies that the Empress's words are not disputed, and Roviel turns to Cecile. She says she will write a letter of thanks from the Emperor, even two. But Cecile replies that there are things that even letters cannot handle. At that moment, Haven approaches them, and the girl addresses him. She asks if he can separate them, and the guy intervenes without hesitation. He lifts them both by their clothes and says that Her Majesty ordered them to stop. Janice apologizes to the Empress and says that the Count refused to obey her orders. The boy smiles and admits to his sister that he's guilty. Afterward, the main character asks Cecile to take Janice to the valet and tells the girl to follow her to prepare the room. The young lady then turns to her brother and asks him to spare her a minute, and he immediately agrees. When the Empress turns to Haven to thank him, the two exchange tense glances again. Roviel asks if he'll go first, as she needs to discuss something with her brother. Haven says it's no problem and he'll wait, and the young lady agrees. During the conversation, the brother insists he didn't actually kidnap the girl. Roviel replies that she heard about her escape. Eddie confirms this and adds that Janice doesn't want to go home. Then Roviel asks if he knew her before, and he replies that they crossed paths in the north. The main character smiles and asks if they really only crossed paths and were close. The guy is embarrassed and assures her that nothing of the sort happened. He adds that they don't understand each other well, and the girl herself is rather strange. Roviel immediately asks if he really trusted such a person to protect his sister. Eddie replies that Janice is one of the strongest women he's ever seen. The young lady remarks that he hasn't changed at all. As they sit down, the girl says Janice came here of her own free will, and it's impossible to return her to the Duke. Eddie adds that she ran away because she doesn't want to become a duchess, and even if she were returned, she'd still leave. Roviel asks if they managed to find the one who mixed the poison. The guy apologizes and admits he didn't. The girl suggests it might have been a personal grudge and should be sought among those she crossed as a countess. Eddie replies that he's already checked everything, but is willing to try again. Roviel says once is enough. She recalls that she questioned all the courtiers connected with the poisoned pie, but no one confessed. Eddie continued his investigation, but she doesn't believe the culprit could have lied to him to the end. The criminal was never found, all suspects were exiled, and searches outside the palace turned up nothing. Then the girl suggests leaving everything as is, believing that if anyone wants to put her into eternal sleep again, they will definitely appear. Eddie objects, saying that her life is in danger and can't wait. The young lady replies that Haven is next to her and is the first to taste her food. Besides, my brother brought the strongest bodyguard in the Empire, so there's nothing to worry about. And thanks to his cure for the poison, it is no longer so easy to put her into eternal sleep. Eddie tries to object, but his sister asks him not to worry and says that the investigation is ongoing and the guards are still looking for the culprit. The guy agrees and adds that among her knights he is the strongest. The girl smiles and confirms this. Eddie immediately declares himself stronger than Janice, and Roviel asks, "What about Haven?" Eddie replies that he was the strongest in his past life, but Haven has held a sword since childhood, and the young lady asks which of them is stronger. Eddie says they're almost evenly matched, but the Duke is still stronger due to his greater experience. However, he's confident he'll become the strongest. The main character pats her brother on the head and says that she has no doubt that their Eddie is a genius swordsman. A little later, the young lady approaches Haven. He smiles and asks if they had a good conversation. The girl replies yes and asks how long he waited. At that moment, she realizes she has nothing to worry about. After all, Eddie and Haven are right next to her. After a while, Janice enters the room. She is dressed in a knight's uniform, and the protagonist greets her. Janice thanks Her Majesty for the invitation. Roviel invites her to sit down, and they begin to eat. The protagonist understands that Janice seems to have firmly decided to stay in Falenda, but still wants to hear it from her. She says that Duke Skyer will soon arrive at the palace for his daughter and asks if Janice intends to return with him. The knight replies that she is an adult, has just found a job, and if she is fired, she will find another, but will not return to Skyer. Roviel says she has no intention of firing her, and, since the decision has been made, she will persuade the Duke to keep Janice here. However, the young lady senses that the girl is hiding deep wounds. Janice thanks her for her understanding, and the Empress, after apologizing, asks why she does not want to return to the ducal house. Janice replies that if she returns, her brother or sister will not be able to become the Duke's heirs. The main character thinks that she understands her because in a past life, Eddie was the same. He ran away from home to give her the county. Janice says she's been saddled with all the responsibilities, and the rest did nothing and now let them obey their mother. She even admits that she wants to go back to see it with her own eyes. Roviel wonders what happened there. Janice declares that she will never return home and is ready to give her life to protect Her Majesty, so that no one will doubt her. Roviel thinks that the girl hates the house so much that she would rather plunge into eternal sleep than return there, and does not understand what the Duke can do to counter this. Skyer's heiress, having fled to the palace, creates an excellent opportunity to secure Western support, that same West that always kept itself aloof. The young lady mentally apologizes to Janice, but in her dealings with the West, she is not going to miss such an opportunity and is wondering whether everything will go according to plan. After a few days, Janice settles into the palace perfectly. She leaves her post only to sleep and conscientiously fulfills her duties as a bodyguard. 3 days later, Roviel gives her the day off for the first time, and it is on this day that Ditria Skyer arrives at the palace for her daughter. The woman introduces herself and says her name is Ditria Skyer. She points to the box and says that it is a coronation gift. The main character thinks that giving a gift in the 5th month of rain is rather weak. She invites Ditria to sit down, noting that the journey had been long and tiring. The woman thanks him, but says that she does not see her daughter, and heard that she became the Empress's personal knight. The young lady senses in her words a demand to return her daughter and feels a slight pity. But the Duchess won't get it, and it's better to move on to more interesting topics. Roviel reports that Janice took the day off due to illness. The woman immediately asks if she's really sick. The main character replies that there is no need to worry, because Janice is just pretending. The woman remarks that the Empress is too generous. Since he allows the knights to behave like this, Roviel replies that Janice is very talented and is willing to overlook her whims for that. The Duchess hints that the girl could be put to better use. The young lady says she would agree, but Janice herself wants to be near her. The Duchess declares that if the Empress is going to get her princess, it is better to abandon the idea. Then Roviel reminds her that her daughter's life is now in her hands, and at the same time, the life of the Duchess herself is in her hands. The woman asks if the Empress is threatening her. Roviel replies that she has become ruler. After the previous emperor was put into eternal sleep, he wonders if the Duchess really thinks she is incapable of beheading anyone else. The woman sighs and admits that Her Majesty is much more interesting than rumors. She apologizes for her rudeness and, like a grieving mother, asks him to let her daughter go. But Roviel tells her not to bother. After all, Janice came of her own free will and can leave whenever she wants. Fortunately, she's in no hurry to return. The Duchess asks if the Empress needs anything from the Duchy of Skyer. The young lady replies that she has nothing. Then the woman suggests speaking directly and making a deal to separate peacefully, since there is no trust between them. But the Empress repeats again that she does not need anything from her. Roviel understands that he will cleanse Pagos, then Delmoy, and prepare for war with the other powers. The main thing is that no one dares to stand in her way. Therefore, it will only be to her advantage if Skyer behaves quietly and does not interfere. The woman promises that the Duchy of Skyer will follow the Empress's will. Roviel replies that this is wonderful, adding that he would like to have more trust in the future. The Duchess agrees, but asks if her daughter really decided to become a bodyguard herself. The Empress replies that this is surprising, but Janice even said she was willing to give her life to protect her. The woman asks if she's serious, and Roviel suggests asking her herself. The woman says she doesn't doubt the Empress's words, noting that her daughter is good, but cautious and often misunderstood. She worried that Janice might be rude. Roviel replies that the girl is polite and sincere and asks not to worry. The Duchess notes that the child clearly likes the Empress. After a while, Janice enters the room. Her mother asks with a smile if it was fun running away from home, and the main character decides to leave them alone. As she walks out, someone addresses her, and the girl realizes it is Haven. The guy says he was waiting for her, and the young lady thinks. Things are clear with Eddie and Janice, but she still doesn't understand why Haven likes her. They go outside, and Haven asks if she really wants to drop the assassination investigation. The girl replies that he is there too, and adds that Eddie has already scolded her for this. If the criminal is still not found, then he needs to be provoked into new actions. Haven asks how she can speak so carelessly when her life is on the line. The young lady asks him to relax and says that she values her life. She reminds that everyone knew about the drugs that Eddie mixed into her food, and that the poison was incredibly bitter, which means the criminal knew about these details. Haven speculates that the attacker hoped she wouldn't notice the taste. The girl replies that she doesn't eat everything and only tried a piece, throwing away the rest. The Duke counters that she did eat it. They fall silent for a moment, and the young lady says she doesn't believe they really wanted to put her into eternal sleep. It was a rather clumsy attempt to poison the Empress. Haven says he's glad it worked out, but he senses she thinks otherwise. Roviel replies that the poisoner could have had other goals, and if they didn't plan to put her into eternal sleep, that only complicates the situation. Haven says that as long as her life is on the line, nothing else matters. The young lady asks what he means, admitting that she doesn't understand what's going on in his head. The guy replies that it's nothing but a headache, and she suggests telling the court physician about it. Haven is about to object, but the girl interrupts him, saying that she knows what he will say about taking care of himself. The young man replies that no, and admits that at first he thought the list of medications was excessive, but now he understands why Eddie did it. The main character thinks that he still doesn't understand anything, because she almost fell into eternal sleep because of the poison. The girl still doesn't understand why they tried to poison her. After all, the perpetrator could have chosen many other methods, but Juriel's poison was used. This means the poisoning had other purposes, and putting her into eternal sleep wasn't part of the plan, and that suits her just fine. Roviel understands why Eddie is so worried about her health. In her past life, she had already fallen into eternal sleep due to illness, but she couldn't tell the Duke about it. Meanwhile, the boy suggests discussing everything with the Count. He also agrees with Her Majesty that there could have been unknown intentions here, and asks if she has any guesses. The girl replies that she has none. She wonders if the criminal could have known whether she would swallow the poison or spit it out, and whether it would lead to illness or eternal sleep. Too many variables. The guy says he understands. The girl believes that if the criminal has achieved his goal, he's already gone into hiding. All that's left to do is wait, and forcing Eddie to comb every inch of the ground would be cruel. She adds that guards continue to monitor Janice. The kingdom has become noticeably safer, and Haven understands that the army commander has a huge job ahead of him. After some time, the young lady's brother peels an apple and says that something is bothering him. He's worried about his sister being alone while he's gone so far away. She asks Eddie to focus. The guy replies that, of course, he will concentrate, and moves on to a conversation about an operation called White Owl. He says that he will first go to Mount Delphin with the White Owl army. There they will work on the dam, and the warriors will pretend to be from the east. If Viscount Hildel mistakes them for Alcus's army, he will declare war. Sister decides there must be no chaos in the southeast. For the sake of stability and the empire, the Imperial Army will intervene as a mediator. The protagonist agrees and adds that a title is still a title. It can be used to attract the loyal Southern Delmoy and the disgruntled Pagos, separating them. Thus, the operation will isolate Pagos. The girl confirms his words. The guy replies that it's not a problem, but the real problem is that his sister doesn't take care of herself. The girl asks why. The guy suggests she think about it herself, since everything they talk about concerns politics. He asks if he really needs to empty the palace to keep her safe. Haven says it sounds tempting. The girl replies that she is working on security, but the brother admits that he is still worried. Due to his attempt to enter eternal sleep, he asks the Duke to take care of his sister. He also asks him to make sure she doesn't put anything in her mouth that he hasn't personally checked. He'll leave the medicine with the butler. Haven agrees. The girl asks, what will happen if the Duke poisons himself? The boy says not to worry, since he gave the Duke Hepaton in large doses beforehand, so even the poison won't put him into eternal sleep. The guy then turns to his sister and asks to look at this body. The Duke looks like he could wrestle a bear with his bare hands. What good would a drop of poison do him if his clothes were about to split at the seams? The young lady asks not to point the knife at people and says that even if the Duke is able to put the bear into eternal sleep, it will not protect against poison. Haven replies that he certainly won't be able to defeat a bear with his bare hands, but he won't be harmed by the poison. The girl's brother asks if he can't handle a bear. Then he'll do it himself. The Duke replies that the bear is beyond his capabilities, but he will deal with it in no time. The girl suggests leaving the matter with this brat to her. If he touches him, he'll have to deal with her. Eddie laughs and says that then only his sister can beat him. After this, he offers to end the conversation and hands her an apple. He asks her to eat, and the main character wonders if she is the only one. The girl says Eddie should eat too and offers to split the apple in half. The guy insists she eat the whole thing. Then he takes another apple, throws it to the Duke, and tells him to eat it, and was strong enough to take good care of his sister. The young man asks if he got it. The main character wonders what this understood thing is and where her brother gets such expressions from. As a child, he was polite and kind. The girl wonders if she spoiled him too much and didn't pay enough attention to him. The Duke calmly bites into the apple and says he's got it. The young lady thinks he's got it too. She watches them eat apples and realizes that it looks like a friendship between crazy children. After some time, the girl sits with papers, and the Duke watches her. He still asks why she doesn't rest. Her Majesty looks completely different from usual. Roviel says she's completely exhausted without her brat by her side, but the Duke reminds her that it's only been a couple of days since the Count left. Roviel replies that this is the first time he left on her orders, and that he will be fine. Haven asks if she's talking about the Count or if she's worried about the people on the Brandel River. The girl says he doesn't understand her feelings. She's the older sister, but she sent her younger brother to a dangerous place. The Duke believes this is the only way to avoid big trouble. He is sure that the Count would be happy with her order because it means trust. The Empress says she's always believed in him. The boy replies that the assignment is different. The girl recalls her brother saying he'd give it his all so as not to disappoint her. The Duke says that she can now prepare a eulogy for the Count. She has nothing to worry about. After this, the young lady looks at the Duke, and she puts her hand on his cheek. The guy asks what happened. The girl says that getting engaged to him was a great decision. The guy turns to her again, but she only strokes his head. He is surprised, and when she removes her hand and sees his expression, she asks if everything is okay. The guy replies that everything is fine. The girl says it's time to rest and offers to have lunch. He agrees. After a while, the girl changes her clothes and hears a knock on the door. She allows him to enter. This is the Knight Commander. She announces that Hildal has declared war. The young lady asks if this is true and notes that they were faster than she thought. Cecile confirms. She says Operation White Owl has been extremely effective. Their people are masters of anger. The girl asks if Eddie knows. The commander replies that he does, and that the Count will hurry too. The Empress inquires about Pagos and Delmoy's reactions. Cecile says that Duke Pagos is looking for a way out, and the war has taken him by surprise. The lady with pink hair says it was worth it. Everyone knows who will benefit from the clash between the South and the East. The Knight's commander reports that a protest has been sent to Duke Delmoy. For Pagos, this will be a stab in the back. The protagonist orders Cecile to monitor Delmoy's reactions and report any movements. She believes events are moving faster than planned. The North is under Haven's protection, the West is temporarily out of action. There won't be any serious problems until the White Owl is completed. The girl wants to see Duke Pagos' reaction in person, not read a report. She tells Cecile that she should be there too. The commander asks where. The young lady answers. She's about to set off for the Duchy of Pagos. Soon she's already riding in a carriage. Someone asks if she's tired. Roviel wonders if she should be tired. The Duke replies that she has little stamina, and he is worried that the journey will be difficult. The girl says that it is easier than sorting through daily documents and sitting over them for 14 hours. The guy says she'll drive herself crazy. The girl recalls that she once fell ill and fell into an eternal sleep. The Duke says that for the Empire, such an empress is a source of pride. But for him to know that the bride does not take care of herself is a tragedy. The girl replies that she doesn't work that much. The guy calls her a workaholic. He suggests they consider the trip a vacation and not return to work for 3 months. The girl refuses, saying that even a month away makes her anxious. The guy claims that, thanks to her, the Empire will survive for a year without help. The girl sarcastically apologizes for the fact that her engagement is a tragedy. The guy says being engaged to her is the best thing in his life, but the documents are more important to her. Roviel replies that he could have just said something if he needed something. She only looks at him after work. The guy says that if she likes his work, she should at least smile. He asks if she knows he's trying for her smile. And besides, even as Duke of the North, he never worked this much. Roviel replies that they walk together for an hour every day. The guy says that without this, she would sit in the palace all day. The young lady tells Haven that she likes him and everything he does, she likes it too. He shouldn't overexert himself. The boy asks her not to say such treacherous words. The girl says she's simply telling the truth. The Duke replies that she doesn't understand what this could lead to. Roviel understands that she cares for him. Doesn't she show it well? She tells Haven again that she doesn't know what she's doing wrong, but she really likes him. He works hard, he's handsome, he has a pleasant voice, he's kind and smart, and his hair is soft and silky. She likes his clear eyes and how nice it is to hold his hand, feeling the warmth of his big palm. The girl wants to continue, but the guy shyly says that he understands. The girl asks him to wait, because that's not all. The coachman, hearing this, becomes embarrassed. After a while, the guy tells her not to worry. The Count isn't someone who's easily put into eternal sleep. Roviel reminds her that her brother is an ordinary person. Haven says the tea will help ease the tension, and the Count will be fine. She'll see him again. At this time, someone comes in and announces that a messenger from the commander-in-chief has arrived. The young lady asks if it's Eddie's and tells them to let him in. The messenger hands over a piece of paper. After reading it, the girl sighs heavily. The boy asks what's wrong with the Count. The girl replies that the commander-in-chief has defeated Pegos's elite army. She says thank God. Then she asks how the rest of the East reacted. The servant replies that there was no movement after the news of the defeat. Haven says they understand they can't stand against the Imperial army, and if they do something, the Empress finishes his thought and says that this will be considered treason. She is also the one whose name every inhabitant of this empire must know. A young leader, already marching under her own coat of arms on her flag. Her closest relative is the Viscount's son and commander of the troops. The girl comes to an unstable territory with dozens of knights and looks at them firmly and calmly. This can only be Her Imperial Majesty, Roviel Satan. The knights lay down their swords and loudly greet her. One of them asks, what brings them here? The girl replies that she came to resolve the conflict between East and South, and immediately inquires about the progress of the war. The knight says the situation was dire when the Eastern Duke's son personally entered the battle. Now everything has calmed down, as the young Duke of Pagosa has withdrawn his troops, but the South intends to take advantage of this and prepares for a full-scale war. The girl asks what made Pagos retreat. The answer is rumors of an attack on the duchy. The young lady asks who did it. The boy admits he's not sure, but he heard the commander-in-chief left for the East a few days ago. The girl thinks about Eddie. The Duke remarks that someone has chosen the quickest way to end the war. The girl says it's not funny, and Eddie is now in Pagosa. Haven states that he would have done the same if he had heard that Her Majesty was heading to the battlefield. The girl says it's impossible to end the war with only 10,000 soldiers, and that she must join him. The Duke reminds her that she doesn't even have that number. The girl suggests arriving there unnoticed, but her bodyguard calls this absurd. Sometime later, the girl is already talking with the young Viscount Hildel and reminds him that he spoke about the South's preparations for a large-scale war. She asks if this is true. The boy confirms and says that the Duke's son will lead the southern offensive on Alkis. The girl clarifies the direction of the attack. He replies that yes, and that his father has already left to greet the young Duke Delmoy. He is expected this evening. The Empress orders the Duke to prepare everything for departure, and he replies that he understands. The girl says they're heading to Viscount Hildel's. Soon they're inside the building, and she looks out the window at the rain. The Duke notices that she's worried about the water, not the children. The girl doesn't deny it and admits that she's deeply worried about her brother. Haven says there's no need to worry, as the Count isn't one to be easily put into eternal sleep. The girl replies that the Duke must remember that her brother is an ordinary man. A messenger enters the room, and she orders him to be let in immediately. After reading the letter, the girl says everything is fine and asks about her brother. The messenger reports that the Duke's son was plunged into eternal sleep during the previous battle, and the palace was under attack. The young lady understands that everything was predetermined. The victory of the revolution is the defeat of the rebellion. Duke Pagosa failed to realize that the Imperial army was beyond his capabilities, and he did not retreat even after the deaths of his elite and his son. Eddie is not one to spare those who flee, and the fate of the Duchy of Pecos is proof of that. This means they deliberately opposed the Imperial army. The Duke adds that the steamship Count cleared the way for them well. The girl says how much she wants to see Eddie, but she's reminded that her safety is more important and asked to wait for the Southern Army. She agrees and says that Duke Pagos' condition will be checked after the arrival of Duke Delmoy's son. Soon, Geppetto Delmoy arrives and says that it is an honor for him to help them. He kisses the young lady's hand, and Haven looks on menacingly. The girl catches his gaze, the guy turns away, and she smiles. She asks if they should go for a walk and takes Haven's hand. After a while, they're already in the garden. The girl notices that someone has given up again. Her brother asks her to honor him. She asks if it's time for him to answer for his actions, because this is punishment for making her worry. The guy says he just wanted to get it over with quickly and see his sister. Isn't that the easiest way? The Duke nods in agreement. The girl doesn't understand why. Under the imperial flag, the Satin family has rallied 20,000 soldiers to defend Hildel. The other rulers of the East preferred to watch from the sidelines. This was the only right decision for them. Despite expectations of a major war, the Empress and the southern troops arrived peacefully in the lands of Pagos. The civil war, which almost became territorial, quickly came to an end. The supreme commander cast Pagos' son into eternal sleep and laid siege to the castle. The Duke locked himself inside. But the Empress decided to lend him a helping hand. She wrote that she would turn a blind eye to her son's betrayal if the Duke surrendered voluntarily. Otherwise, he would be considered a traitor. They gave her 3 hours to consider the matter. The girl understands that the Duke is waiting for help from the Eastern troops, but she wonders if they really thought she would wait that long. Someone asks Her Majesty if the Duke will come out himself. The girl replies that if not, then 3 will come into him, and asks what is bothering the guy so much. She tells him to tell his father to come to Pagos. Since she's come all this way, it's worth meeting in person. The guy says that the father has already left, and will arrive in a few days. The girl agrees. She then asks if they should visit Duke Pagos themselves, and they enter the duchy. Sitting on a chair, the girl says that a little more, and the white flag would have been useless. She asks what he's doing. The Duke apologizes. The girl notices that he hasn't kneeled. The man is surprised and immediately falls to his knees, greeting her. The girl says he doesn't look too happy. He smiles and assures her otherwise. She reminds him that he has dragged an innocent duchy into conflict and is behaving outrageously. The girl says that he has no shame whatsoever for the war that was started under her nose. The man replies that he does not need to ask permission for personal matters. The girl says that it was a battle between Alkes and Hildel, and Pagos had no right to interfere. He moved his army without permission and endangered the empire. The Duke objects, recalling Delmoy's intervention. The girl replies that Duke Delmoy asked her permission. The man asks what the threat was. The defense of the South from Eastern provocations requires Her Majesty's permission. The girl understands that he is lying without shame or conscience. Duke Pagos is angry and speaks of his family's ancient rights as founders of the empire. He believes that he is fulfilling his duty as the ruler of the East, and she has no right to interfere. The girl says that his insolence gives the impression that he does not intend to live long. She asks if he wants to go into eternal sleep, and Haven points his sword at him. The girl's brother says he'll do it himself, but his personal knight shuts him up. The girl praises Janus. Duke Pagos trembles with fear, bows his head, and begs for mercy. The girl says she doesn't particularly want it. He shouts that he was mistaken and begs for forgiveness. The girl rises and addresses Seltzer Pagos. She demotes his family's title to that of Count, transfers the duchy to the control of the crown, and gives him the lands of Siliv. She orders them to prepare to leave the castle. The man screams in despair. Haven doubts Pagos will forgive this. The girl agrees that he will seek revenge, but will respond differently, to give the East a reason for rebellion. For now, it's better to observe and show that the crown has no evil intentions. To attract thousands of Eastern soldiers, one must not put the ruler into eternal sleep, but humiliate him. While she was busy with reforms, Duke Delmoy arrived. The girl greets him and says it's been a long journey. He apologizes for missing the coronation. Roviel explains that the situation in the southeast has changed, and she needs to be told something important. He replies that he will carry out her wishes, but first he wants to ask for something. The girl asks about what. The Duke offers to keep his son close to her. The girl is surprised, and Haven looks on warily. She realizes that this is an unexpected stroke of luck and asks if it is about Geppetto. The Duke confirms and says that he is offering this because of his son's talent. The girl knows of his eloquence and understands that she needs such a talent. Her father says they don't require a position. He adds that the guy will be faithful to her all his life, whether it be as an assistant or something more. He asks her to think about it. Rovio replies that she's not interested in lovers, but the offer is tempting. She agrees and, with a smile, realizes that she has a new employee. Walking down the corridor, the girl is glad that the East has been pacified and the South has a new hostage for the ministry. She understands why the previous emperor traveled so often. But he notices that the Duke is moving on and calls out to him. He turns around, and the girl asks if something is wrong. He says no, but she feels the opposite. A cry about a fool is heard in the hallway. The guy asks not to call him that. The girl sees that her brother has once again clashed with his personal knight and asks him not to quarrel. Her brother says she's asking for it. The girl thinks otherwise and tells Janice to ignore him. Sitting down at the table, she asks about the troop deployment. The guy replies that he left 5,000 soldiers. She asks about the commander. He says he's entrusted command to a proven fighter. Roviel says that since he brought him, it means he is confident, and she trusts them as well, like James and Haven. His brother asks if she found him. He replies no, but they were lucky. The girl looks at the Duke and sees that he is thinking about something. It was not possible to talk earlier because of the many affairs and complaints of the Eastern aristocrats. To prevent betrayal, it is necessary to take control of the Eastern troops and borders. She lowered taxes, appointed a new tax collector, and warned of severe punishment. Over time, things calmed down and they returned to Finland. Soon, the Duke said he had to go north. The girl asks why. He replies that nothing happened. She says she hates lies. He assures her he doesn't lie. There's just something troubling waiting for me at home. The girl asks if something bad has happened. He replies that it's not worth her attention. The girl understands that there are many reasons for leaving. He's become strange, and she thinks how difficult it is to just talk. She says they'll meet in Finland. The guy promises to return as soon as possible, but the girl asks him not to delay, as without him, things will become too much. Then she realizes she didn't even try to keep him working. The young man just smiles, comes closer, and quietly says that such freedom always returns just as quickly. Soon, the girl is riding in a carriage and tells her brother that people from the north have arrived at the palace looking for Haven. She asks if something serious has happened. The brother replies that he knows nothing and doesn't remember anything unusual. The girl says that in her past life she wasn't an empress, and the future rarely repeats the past. The young man agrees and reminds her that the Duke asked her not to worry. He has the right to visit his duchy, and his sister should relax. The girl realizes Eddie and Janice are saying the same thing, but the anxiety doesn't go away. If it weren't important, he would have told her himself. She thinks that perhaps the problems were just an excuse, and he left because of her strictness. Caleb and the other secretaries are paid, and the Duke is the rightful owner of the lands and is far from a poor man. And yet it seems to her that a precious stone from some bird is too small a reward for his work. She decides that when he returns, she will fix everything and treat him more gently. But time passes, and the groom doesn't return. The secretary and brother begin to worry about her. The girl understands that while she was in Pagosa, Caleb dealt with all the previously agreed matters. Geppetto, having become Minister of Foreign Affairs, quickly settled in, and the atmosphere in the department became noticeably better. Everything is going well, but the feeling of anxiety does not leave her, and she does not understand why. The secretary turns to her again, and her brother suggests going out for a walk. The girl asks if they're talking about a walk. The boy says she just needs a change of scenery. She declines and says she'll walk alone. She points to the crumpled sheet of paper and asks to rewrite it. She apologizes for the extra work, but the secretary assures her that everything is fine and takes the paper, despite the backlog of work. In the garden, the girl again remembers Haven and realizes that she does not fully know his feelings. Soon the commander of the knights approaches her and asks what brings her here. The girl is interested in news from the north. A month has passed and there's still no news from Haven, and she asks if Cecile knows the reason for the delay. Cecile replies that she doesn't know and assumes Her Majesty knows more about the Duke. The girl objects, and the blonde asks if there was any conflict between them. Roviel says that's impossible. Haven admitted he likes her, apparently from the very first time they met. He always treated her well and supported her when Eddie went off to war. Cecile asks how she responded to his feelings. The girl says that she thanked him. The commander is surprised and asks if this means she doesn't like the Duke. The girl replies that he's the best groom, but Cecile clarifies that it's not about work. The girl thinks and admits that she likes Haven and finds him very interesting. It only takes one look to understand how handsome he is. His strong body and fair skin only emphasize this. Cecile asks if he's not her type. The girl admits that he is perfect for her taste, and people like Eddie are perceived more as younger brothers than men. Cecile asks if she only remembers Dehard, and asks what she thinks of Geppetto Del Moy. Rumors circulate around the palace that he's in love with the Empress. The girl admits Geppetto is attractive, and Cecile asks why she shouldn't take a closer look at him. The girl understands that she could have tied another useful person to herself, but she prefers Haven and does not want to hurt his heart. She says that Haven alone is enough for her. Cecile points out that it is not necessary to marry someone you don't like. The girl is surprised and asks if she really thinks Haven doesn't like her. Cecile reminds him that she rejected his feelings. The girl clarifies exactly when. Cecile says she thanked him for the confession, and Roviel replies that she didn't say no. Cecile notes that saying thank you when someone says they love you can feel like they're saying no. The girl is shocked. Cecile says that a misunderstanding with Dehard could lead to problems and reports a guest in his castle. Roviel asks who it is. Cecile replies that it is the princess of the kingdom of Grypton. The girl is surprised. The north of the Seven Hills borders Grypton, and in all their history, they have never fought. This is especially strange given Grypton's love of provocation. Perhaps the princess was sent as a guarantee of peace, and Haven went to settle border conflicts. Cecile interrupts her thoughts and says that the princess has proposed to Duke Dehard. It's unknown what he replied, but the princess and her retinue have long been living in his castle. The girl understands that Haven might have assumed his feelings had been rejected. She orders Cecile to get ready. She asks in surprise where. The girl replies that they are going to pick up her fiancé. In the carriage, the brother is enjoying the weather. She tells him to sit still, but he says he is happy to travel together. He offers them something tasty to eat, but the girl says they're not going there to have fun. Then he proposes a game. Who can catch up with Dehard first? He promises to tie him up and drag him to her, and then try some northern cuisine. The girl says this is a strange meeting plan. The young man jokes about eternal sleep, but the girl replies that Haven did not cheat on her. She says that if she cheated, she would simply end the marriage. Eddie regrets that his sister is too kind, but she disagrees. She's sure Haven isn't that kind of person. Eddie says he knows it. Anyone who has seen how the Duke behaves with others will confirm this. The girl wonders if Haven behaves differently without her. She remembers that in a past life she was in the north. Eddie is surprised, and she says she met Haven in the winter when she was 20. The guy says that he somehow found out her past. Otherwise, she would have found out how scary he can be. He assures her that the Duke will never turn his back on her. The girl wonders where he gets such confidence from. In her past life, she was shaking from the cold, but Haven warmed her with warm tea. They exchanged a few phrases that faded from memory over time. He brought everything she came for, and she just wants to thank him. She is afraid to punish him for the delay, and hopes that he will forgive her again. Soon they enter the north. The wind changes, and even without winter, it is cold here. The girl notices a horseman racing next to the carriage. She recognizes Haven and orders him to stop. They walk out, and Haven offers her his hand. At that moment, Eddie knocks her away and grabs his sword. He points it at the Duke. The girl asks, surprised, what he's doing. Haven also doesn't understand what's happening, and the bodyguard grabs his weapon. Eddie asks what to do with the one who broke his sister's heart. The Duke kneels down and takes the edge of her cloak. He asks if he really hurt her. The girl turns to Haven. She asks him to stand up and thinks how strangely everything has changed. She says that she came for him and suggests that they go back together. He agrees, and the girl understands why past emperors fell in love so much. So much so that they were ready to destroy the country. She nearly spent half the treasury on him, but first she asks if he would like to introduce her to someone special. He is surprised and asks with whom. She talks about the Princess of Grypton, who proposed to him and lives in his duchy. Haven asks how she knows, says he refused, and tells her not to worry. The girl asks if he refused. He confirms, and she says that otherwise she would have brought the army. Eddie laughs and says he recognizes his sister. The Duke takes her hand and says that since she has come all this way, he will be happy to show her the way. He looks so excited that it is difficult for her to tell the real reason for his visit. In the carriage, he says he would have returned sooner, knowing how worried she is. She admits she thought about betrayal. He replies that this will never happen. She says that otherwise there would be war. She notices his dark look and asks him not to pretend that he has doubts. As she steps out of the carriage, he leans towards her ear. He says he really wanted to see her. She replies that he is lying. He admits that he was planning to leave tomorrow and jokes about the hole under the mountain for the princess. Haven's uncle, Trid Dahard, meets them at the castle and asks for permission to introduce himself. He says that he is grateful for the timely visit and was going to write the letter himself. He begs to take the Duke with him, but does not reveal the reason. The girl asks for an explanation. He admits that the Duke almost started a war to reject Gripton's offer. The girl asks about the war and orders the princess to be called. She asks if she's already buried under the mountain. Haven replies that she's still in the castle. The girl wonders what this "for now" means. After a while, she's already sitting with her. The fair-haired lady greets Her Majesty Empress Satin. The girl confidently says that she is Gripton's second daughter, and her name is Leona. The Empress calmly asks if they have come to propose to her fiancé, and asks Leona to relax and speak frankly. She adds that not everyone would dare make such a proposal to someone engaged to the Empress, and asks whether the purpose was political or related to feelings for Haven. Leona is surprised and mockingly asks if she is talking about feelings for this idiot. Assuring that this is not at all the case, she explains that she learned of their engagement upon arrival, and that her father simply ordered her to marry the Duke. They are merely engaged, and so she doesn't understand why it should bother her. She says outright that she doesn't like Haven, causing the Duke's father to mentally remark on how strange she is. The girl adds that a princess can't rely on feelings in such matters. The young lady ironically clarifies that this means she is simply being forced to marry a man for whom she has no sympathy whatsoever, and concludes that the king is not the best father. The fair-haired lady grows angry and says she doesn't consider this an excuse. She would like to fulfill her father's wishes, but he won't punish her for refusing, so she'll be returning home soon. Roville is surprised, since Leona spent 2 months here. She replies that she has no other choice, especially since she was planning to leave, even before she knew how deep the hole would be for her. The young lady wonders if she's planning to wait until she leaves and return later. If she'd realized she had no chance because of her engagement to Haven, she would have left immediately. Gripton and Dahard aren't exactly friendly neighbors, and it's odd that a marriage alliance has suddenly been proposed. If they'd wanted a union with the Seven Hills, they would have come to her. The girl catches herself wondering if she's missing something important. The princess asks if she can go and prepare for departure before they decide to deal with her for proposing to her fiancé. The girl tells her to sit down. She asks about the situation at the border. The Duke replies that everything is calm. The girl checks with Gripton's troops and whether the information matches up. He says that many soldiers are missing in action. The girl asks where they went, and the tension in the room fills. The princess jumps up abruptly. She cries out, do they really want to accuse them of something because she is here on her father's orders and not for the sake of war? The Empress says that she does not consider her father mad, but understands that Leona came for the sake of marriage and to distract attention. 4 years later, Gripton and Zilton would have attacked the Seven Hills if she hadn't taken the throne and paid Zilton off. The debt amounted to 320,000 gold pieces. He would have continued to grow, and in the past, Zilton wouldn't have tolerated that, having teamed up with Gripton. But now, things are different. The debt has been paid, the union of the two empires is stronger than ever, and a union between Zilton and Gripton is now unlikely. Without building up its military power, there is no point in Gripton attacking the empire. And yet the troops suddenly disappeared, and the girl realizes that they missed it. She says Gripton intends to occupy Ilione in the northeast. The princess remains silent, and the girl realizes that, starting with Ilione and adding Tudrum, Gripton will become a danger even to the alliance of the Seven Hills with Zilton. The young lady orders Ilione and Tudrum to be checked immediately, and the Duke confirms that they are leaving right now. The princess says that if that is all, she would like to leave. The girl asks what if she doesn't let her leave. The princess thinks she'll be allowed to marry the Duke, but is refused. The blonde lady assumes that she is being taken hostage. The young lady replies that she hadn't even thought about it and invites the princess as a guest, understanding her diplomatic value until Gripton's plans are revealed. But the princess declares that she would rather plunge into eternal sleep than become a hindrance to Gripton and her father. She adds that it would be a good idea to take a companion with her. The Duke loses his composure and draws his sword. The main character turns to him with concern, but he presses the blade to the princess's throat. He looks at her menacingly. Roville orders her to lower her sword. She says that there will be no companion and orders the princess to leave the country immediately. She asks permission to leave. Later, they sit at the table, and the Duke says the princess insulted her. He thinks she shouldn't have been let go and jokes about the mountain, but the main character tells Haven to calm down and says it would be better to plant a tree in that hole. She adds that if something happens to the princess, the war with Gripton will begin immediately. The guy replies that war is inevitable anyway, and it's better to deal with Gripton before capturing Ileone. The girl agrees that an attack is possible, but notes the difference between the initial blow and the response. She asks how the neighbors will react. She understands that there is a tight balance of power on the continent. If it is broken, chaos will break out, and therefore it is necessary to first find out Gripton's actions. After a while, her brother comes into the room and addresses her. He says the Princess of Gripton has escaped and asks if he should chase her. The girl replies that she drove her out herself. Her brother notices that the Duke has been so diligent in digging her grave on Mount Mitras. Roviel says there will be no burial. The boy jokes that jealousy can make one get rid of annoying people. Roviel replies that such a thing is unacceptable for an empress. He asks his sister if she's jealous of Gripton's daughter. The girl replies that she's not sure if it's jealousy. She admits she simply wants to monopolize Haven. Her brother is embarrassed, but she says the Duke is her man, and no one has the right to take him away. She understands that she cannot calmly watch as someone tries to take away her caring and devoted fiancé. The Duke sheepishly asks if she is telling the truth about the monopoly. The girl replies that he said it himself first, and the young man agrees. She notices his expression, and he says he'll fix it. The girl suggests starting the meeting. She states that she wants to contact Ileone and Tudrum before Gripton attacks and asks if there is contact with the Seven Hills. The Knight Commander replies that there is no contact, they only observe movements and rarely interact with the Seven Hills. The girl asks if Gripton can contact both of them. Cecile says they have an informant at the border. The girl understands that Cecile cannot cope alone, and upon returning to Finland, she will instruct Geppetto to create an external surveillance department. Knowing the situation on the border, she will be able to accurately determine the direction of Gripton's actions. Among Gripton's neighbors, only Ileone is present. The Duke's uncle appeals to Her Majesty. He asks if she truly believes Gripton will attack Ileone. She replies that otherwise there's no point in their actions. The man objects that Gripton could capture Ileone at any moment. He adds that Gripton always coveted the fertile lands of the Seven Hills, but the girl says that the duchies are hindering the invasion of the empire. She asks if they've found a workaround. Uncle replies that Gripton doesn't like wasting resources, and that's a high probability. The girl says she will think about it and orders Cecile to monitor Gripton's movements and send people to Zilton. She explains that Zilton could also be a target and that they need to be warned. Cecile confirms that she understands. She asks if this is too much even for Gripton, since an attack on Zilton seems unlikely. The girl recalls that the Seven Hills fell because of the stupidity of the former emperor, but that is in the past. As long as she's on the throne, the empire won't be easy prey. Even if the army is weak, gold will compensate. War is a struggle for resources, and Zilton only needs to hold out until his ally deploys an army. Then even Gripton won't be able to fight on two fronts. Eddie tells his sister that common sense should not be applied to the Griptonians, calling them attack dogs. He suggests introducing the Haven army in their place. The girl wonders what Haven would do and orders Cecile to send people to Zilton to find out their financial capabilities. She also orders a check of the noble families, ammunition supplies. Cecile replies that she will take care of this immediately. The girl asks her brother to make sure that his troops are ready to move out at any moment. The Duke's uncle says they will recheck the northern border and surrounding lands. He adds that Her Majesty should hurry to return to Finland. If war breaks out, it will be too dangerous for her in the north. The Duke supports him, saying that it is indeed dangerous there and that she had better return. The girl is surprised and replies that if it becomes dangerous in the north, she should be there. She says that without Haven by her side, she's unsafe anywhere, and he asks if being next to him isn't the safest place in the world. The guy is slightly surprised, but confidently says that he will crush all enemies. The girl looks at him with surprise and understands that her presence will increase their power. She decides to monitor the situation from here until the movements of Gripton's troops become clearer and declares the meeting over. When the others leave, the Duke extends his hand to her. He says that he will take her to the prepared chambers and leads her to the room for staying in Dehart. He notices that the room is small and hastily prepared. The main character watches him and remembers the words of the fair-haired lady. That gratitude for recognition can look like hidden hostility. She realizes that she has been too busy and now needs to clear up this misunderstanding. The girl tells the bodyguard that she needs to talk and asks him to leave them alone and not let anyone in. The bodyguard agrees and leaves. The young lady turns to Haven. He responds, apologizes, and says that he should have sorted things out earlier and returned to her faster. The girl asks to forget about it and says that she wants to discuss something else, coming closer. She says that, having thanked him for his confession, she did not reject him. And she adds that she doesn't intend to marry anyone but him. Haven is embarrassed. He says it's impossible. The girl asks why, because she's telling the truth. He repeats that this is impossible, and she understands that there is a misunderstanding between them. She points at him, confused as to why he doesn't accept her words, reaching out to his face. She says their feelings are mutual, and she's sure of it. Haven replies that if she loves him as much as he loves her, so she thinks and hopes for the same thing, and the girl confirms it. He kisses her hand, then her lips, and as she pulls away, she realizes that this is exactly what he meant. By the way, she doesn't understand why he is so excited after such a passionate kiss. The girl sighs, grabs him, and pulls him towards her, kissing him again. The young man is embarrassed and surprised, grabs the edge of the bed, and suddenly there is a crack. She wonders what the sound was and, looking down, realizes it was the edge of the bed. She turns to His Majesty, but he says that the lady has no idea how long he'd waited for this moment. The girl replies that she now understands his feelings perfectly. She asks him to let go of her hand, but the guy says he will never let her go. The girl clarifies that she means the other hand, otherwise he will break the column. The guy looks at his hand in surprise, and the young lady thinks that he noticed it only now. The Duke says he will take her to another room, but the girl replies that there is nothing to worry about. He says it's dangerous there, and she replies that as long as he doesn't touch anything, everything is safe. Suddenly, she hears a noise, looks out and sees her brother. He loudly complains and asks his sister to look at the girl who won't let him inside. The blonde says she received orders not to let anyone in, and he replies that he is her brother after all. Janice declares that she is the Empress's personal guard. The guy is indignant, talks about compliance, and thinks that it's time for her to acquire it. The girl asks them to stop and says that it's time for Eddie to get along with Janice. He claims that she started the fight, and the blonde replies that he provoked it himself. The young lady tells Janice that Eddie is the only one who can be allowed to see her at any time. She replies that she understands. The girl thinks that children usually bond through arguments, but these kids are different. Eddie says he'll be out for a bit. He mentions a medicine he's been unable to find for a long time and asks if he can get it for her. She wonders if there's anything new left, and he replies that there is. She asks how far it is to go, and he says it's very close. The girl agrees and says he'll go with Janice. The blonde is indignant. Eddie asks why her. Janice says she can't leave the Empress, but the heroine claims it's an order. She adds that this is a good chance for them to get along. As they leave, the Duke says he'll escort her to the dining hall. Roviel notices that he looks happy. They enter the hall, and the girl sees the family members with puzzled faces. Someone pulls out a chair for her and tells her that the dish of the day is stewed venison, a northern tradition. He doubts she'll like the taste. She replies that she's looking forward to tasting it, noting that with his parents' black hair, he looks nothing like them. She tells everyone to sit down and realizes that she can finally conduct the interrogation. The family begins their meal, and the Duke watches his bride with a smile. His uncle sits gloomily, as if at a funeral. The girl puts down the cutlery. She says she was told he was running the duchy instead of Haven, and asks if there were any difficulties. The man confirms this and thanks for the concern, saying that there were no problems. The girl clarifies whether this is true, and says that she heard about his desire to become a full-fledged duke. She realizes she's been wanting to bring this up for a long time, despite Haven's words. The family's reaction surprises her, and she notices that there are those here who opposed Haven becoming duke. Uncle says they were wrong once. They thought their nephew didn't want a title, but that's a thing of the past. The girl asks if that's true, and the man explains that in his youth, he was afraid to go out in public. The young lady is surprised and asks if he was truly afraid. The man confirms. The girl doubts they're talking about the same person. Her uncle admits it's hard to believe. Until the age of 16, his nephew was a cowardly and weak child. The main character is surprised and looks at the Duke. She asks if it's true, and he replies that it was a long time ago. He checks with his uncle, who says that Haven is the only Duke of Dehard, no matter what they say. The girl realizes that she had been waiting for this conversation for so long, but everything turned out ridiculous. After some time, She asks again if he was really a weak child. The Duke admits this, and she asks if a person can change that much. He says he's still weak and cowardly. The girl replies that love doesn't mean believing in everything. The guy takes her hand and says that he is not lying and is afraid every second. He's afraid that she'll turn away, but whoever she thinks he is, he will always love her, even if one day he becomes annoying. The girl says that this is not true and reminds her how much she loves her brother, despite his stupidity. The guy agrees and compares him to Count Seaton, after which he laughs. The main character smiles, watching him, and realizes that she has no experience in relationships. Instead of clarity and frankness, she always felt more comfortable in her work. Before, there was no one to feel sorry for her, and in the end, she went into her eternal sleep alone. So now, if someone loves her despite her flaws, she will do everything to reciprocate. She understands that Edwin is her precious brother, who is always there for her, and the man smiling at her is Haven, her future husband. The girl realizes that she is ready to give him half of the treasury, but he still doubts her feelings. She realizes that she has done almost nothing for him and asks why he loves her. The guy says he fell in love at first sight, and she is surprised. After all, back then she looked like a walking corpse from overwork. She asks how the quiet and timid Haven was able to change his uncle's mood. He smiles and says that he brought him the head of Commander Grifton. The girl understands that it's time to change the subject, gets indignant, and asks not to tell. The guy says he just calmly crossed the border and came back. The girl thinks that even Eddie didn't do this at 16, and decides that it's time to tie these madmen up. At this time, the brother says that his ears are itchy and asks if his sister remembers him. The blonde tells him not to talk and to look for a cure for the Empress. Suddenly, the young man senses danger, grabs the knight, and pulls her away. The girl is surprised and asks if this is really the same one. He confirms and explains that the intestinal bacillus is good for the lungs and is found only here. The girl notices a strange liquid on the floor and asks if it is dangerous. The guy replies that yes, and warns about the poisonous blood and saliva. The blonde closes her eyes and thinks that this is medicine for the Empress. She opens them and attacks the monster with determination, along with her brother. Janice Skyer dreamed of a quiet life and to understand why she was fighting for a cure. We need to go back a little, to the girl who wanted carefree living. One day she pulled out the wrong stick and everyone started congratulating her, saying that Miss Janice was now the heir to the Duchy of Skyer. The brother and sister thanked her. They were glad they could relax, and she was only 9 years old. On the day she came of age, she ran away from home, realizing that her old life was over. Fencing, management, and culture were left behind, and she was thinking about an easy job with good pay. Suddenly, someone asked if she was Janice Skyer, and if she had really run away. She didn't understand who it was, and the guy remembered his sister's words about good behavior. He asked if she was on the run, but the girl told him to leave. She moved on, and he wondered what to do, remembering his sister's advice. He decided to be patient, and again suggested talking calmly. He asked if she would like to become his sister's bodyguard with accommodation and pay. She threatened to knock him out, but he said that then she would be protected even from the Duchess. The girl stopped and asked who his sister was. He replied that it was the Empress of the country, and she wondered if this was true. She noticed his pink hair and green eyes. Judging his age, she realized that in her role as the Empress's personal knight, she would be respected. The girl agreed and met the Empress after many trials. Unlike her brother, she was silent and always busy with work. Even when they talked about lunch, she put it off for the sake of reports. Then the Duke would simply pick her up in his arms, saying that she shouldn't starve herself, and she would argue that she would eat later. The girl understood that becoming the bodyguard of the Empress, who hardly ever leaves her desk, was a rare stroke of luck. It was like winning the lottery. And no one complained, even though Janice spent the entire day staring at the sky. She even placed a small, soft sofa by the window so that she could truly enjoy this quiet and well-paid life. Janice wondered if she could live like this until old age. And to do that, Her Majesty would need to live a very long time. After all, if one of them overtired themselves, it would only be a question of who would fall into eternal sleep first. The Empress recently ate a poisoned pie, but she still remained careless when it came to food. Janice imagined that Her Majesty would remain her boss even after she turned 90. She also thought the Empress lived so recklessly that both the boy and the northern beast had gone mad. So it's Janice's turn to go crazy with them, even if it means catching a four-legged snake. The creature was poisonous in its entirety, so the girl only repeated to herself that this was medicine for Her Majesty. At this time, the young lady's brother warned her not to damage the monster's organs. A little while later, the main character was already watching as these two brought her the medicine. She wondered why there were 2 cups, and her brother replied that the second one was for Haven. The guy immediately refused, but Eddie assured them that the drink was healthy and tasty, since they had spent so much effort finding the second monster. Then they started shouting at him to drink, but he resisted and tried to break free. At that moment, the main character realized that she wanted to tie them with a harness, but peace and quiet somehow came on their own. At that very second, the blonde runs into the room and shouts that Gripton has captured Zilton. The main character was shocked and asked if the attack was really not on them, but on Zilton. The Knight Commander confirmed this and added that a month ago, Zilton sent a letter asking for help, but Gripton intercepted it, and therefore the capture became known only now. The young lady wondered if this meant that the princess had come there only as a distraction. Having captured the rich Zilton, Gripton was probably aiming for their empire, and the girl screamed at the thought. She stated that they needed to return to Felland immediately and urgently gather the nobility. Previously, Dehard alone would have been enough to stop Gripton, but the capture of Zilton changed everything. Now, the neighboring power was superior to them in both territory and population, which meant that serious preparation was required. Soon the Knight Commanders entered the room and addressed Her Majesty. She thanked them for their work, after which the blonde ran out, realizing that she finally had her first rest in a week. The Empress decided to first find out which nobles Zilton and Gripton were interacting with, realizing that internal unity was most important now. Zilton's military power was high, and his fall was clearly connected to internal conflicts. The Seven Hills will inevitably be divided between conservatives and hardliners. Many of them did not come to the coronation, and the girl wondered how many nobles would follow her, because this uncertainty prevented the start of an open war. She knew that there were those who were previously against her, but now support her, but this is a special case. At this point, the Duke asked her if she had a headache, and the girl replied that it was nothing. The brother immediately panicked, and the bodyguard also worriedly asked if everything was okay. Eddie stated that if it was about Gripton, then he was ready to plunge them all into eternal sleep. The girl asked her brother not to be reckless and to give her some time. She understood their feelings, especially her brother, who was used to doing crazy things for her. The guy promised to obey her and wished that she would not get sick, and the girl replied that she intended to live next to him for a very long time. At that moment, the room burst into the news that the crazy old man from Gripton has proposed to her. The guy noticed everyone looking at him angrily, and the young lady asked what they were talking about. A moment later, Eddie, the personal knight, and the Duke burst into laughter. The girl told them to calm down, realizing that the 3 of them were acting like real lunatics. The reason turned out to be a letter from Emperor Gripton, and the girl was surprised at his stupidity. The letter said that if she gave the empire as a dowry, there would be no invasion. She turned to the Duke and was surprised by his answer. The guy calmly declared that he would deprive Emperor Gripton of his head that night. The brother said that he should stand in line, and the heroine told them both to calm down and asked the knight to calm them down. But she only waved her sword. And the young lady thought, did the letter just get cut up? And then she said everything was under control. She insisted that her talent was enough to protect the empire. But the Duke was outraged by the waste of time. He thought there was nothing to discuss, but the girl reminded him that she was obliged to consider all options. The personal knight and brother insisted that there were no other solutions and that the sister had nothing to think about. Haven asked if she was willing to marry for the sake of the country, essentially selling herself. The young lady replied that he had understood everything wrong and that this would not happen. The guy sighed and said that now he understood everything. He understood why Count Satin had yielded the throne to her and insisted on uniting the continent. He used to think that his brother simply wanted to reward her, and that if she were despotic, they would be less likely to be called crazy. The girl wondered if she really needed to become a despot for this. The Duke asked her what she was thinking about, and asked her not to say that she had decided to accept the offer. The Empress replied that she was wondering why Gripton had sent a love letter. The Duke assumed that this was either a veiled request to behead him, or an attempt to buy time and restore order in the captured Zilton. The girl agreed that this option could not be ruled out. She knew that this gave her time to meet with the nobles, and that was why she had gathered them. A royal spy from Zilton was recently discovered, and she ordered a check of the registration of all nobility. Tomorrow, they would find out their mood, and the Duke asked her not to worry. He said that now the empire was acting openly, and hidden conspiracies would become visible. The girl asked if this meant that they were now easy prey, but the boy replied that Gripton was not capable of winning the hearts of their people. She asked why he was so sure. The guy said they had a magnificent Empress, and no one would trade her for the creepy Gripton. He recalled that in 6 months, under her leadership, 7 hills were transformed. The girl thought he was blinded by love and admitted that she was not convinced. But soon, one of the aristocrats became indignant, wondering if the Empress would really let this go unpunished. Another duke spoke of disrespect for the empire. Everyone demanded that the guilty be put into eternal sleep and punished for their insolence. The Empress was surprised by such a reaction. She expected support only from the north, but she heard from both Skyer and Del Moy. The girl understood that not everyone supported her, but that was enough. She moved on to the second part and recalled Gripton's letter. It was a proposal of marriage and the transfer of the 7 hills for the sake of peace. She wanted to hear their opinions, so she called the meeting. One of the nobles asked what if they agreed, but Gripton still attacked. The girl replied that there was a risk, but it was a chance to avoid war. The central nobility rose up and declared that they did not need another emperor. The girl realized that these were the people who were previously against her. They admitted that the previous emperor would have accepted the offer, but now they see how the empire has changed under her rule. And everything will collapse if you accept Gripton's conditions. They swore to serve her and not bow to the enemy. The girl was silent, comprehending what was happening. She realized that she had truly become an empress, smiled and spoke. She proposed to discuss the new ruler of the East and turned Count Delac Noir. He said that the East is in turmoil and now it needs order. The girl remembered that she had recently deprived the East of Duke Pagos. His successor didn't even show up for the meeting. She was wondering how to convince the East, but the man continued. He said Gripton's proposal was beyond all bounds.